Chapter 445. Luo Jianyan was on the verge of exploding. Luo Jianyan was not famous in the Jianghu, but he was the Luo clan's patriarch. Since when had he ever been threatened by a junior like this? However, at this time, Luo Tianyang whispered behind Luo Jianyan, "Old ancestor, just let them go if they can't do it. Fei Hong has the ancestral relic of our Luo family. Once she is enraged, it will be a lose-lose situation. Even if Fei Hong can't leave the Luo family, our Luo family will suffer a great loss." Luo Tianyang said this partly for the Luo clan's sake, and partly for Luo Fei Hong's sake. After all, Luo Fei Hong was his biological daughter. It would be unreasonable to say that Luo Tianyang had no feelings for her at all. If Luo Fei Hong really destroyed the ancestral relic and the Luo clan's grand formation, Luo Fei Hong would definitely die today. Although Mo Yezi was on their side, Mo Yezi was not a martial Dao grandmaster with combat strength. Chu Xiao and the others were only relatively strong among the younger generation. How could they fight against the entire Luo clan? Therefore, it was better for both sides to take a step back and let Luo Fei Hong go. The Luo clan would only lose some face, but they would not lose too much. However, Luo Tianyang ignored Luo Jianyan's current state of rage and his identity. If someone else had said this, Luo Jianyan might have calmed down and taken a step back. However, Luo Tianyang was Luo Fei Hong's father. His words were basically adding fuel to the fire. Luo Jianyan looked at Luo Tianyang with a gloomy gaze and said coldly, "You're still speaking up for this vile spawn and trying to save her life? It's all because of the good daughter you've taught. As the patriarch, it's fine that you're not living up to expectations, but you've taught two children. One is useless, and the other is a traitor. From now on, you can forget about being the patriarch." Luo Tianyang was stunned when he heard this. He couldn't believe that he would end up like this. Luo Jianyan looked at Luo Fei Hong and said coldly, "Vile spawn, I'll give you one last chance. Hand over the ancestral relic and I'll spare your life. You can repent in front of the ancestors of the Luo clan. Otherwise you'll wish you were dead." Luo Jianyan was furious, but Luo Fei Hong's character was far tougher than he had imagined. Hearing Luo Jianyan's words, Luo Fei Hong didn't say a word. He took the ancestral relic in her hand and crushed it with a loud bang. His actions were so direct that it was beyond everyone's imagination. In that instant, the eyes of the people from the Luo family turned red. The ancestral relic not only represented the Luo family's trump card, but it also represented the Luo family's ancestors. Now that Luo Fei Hong had crushed it, it was as if he had dug up his own ancestor's grave and scattered his ashes on the ground. "You're courting death," Luo Jianyan shouted angrily. A powerful aura surged from his body and he was about to attack Luo Fei Hong. However, the moment the ancestral relic was destroyed, the entire Luo family began to tremble. Layers of formation inscriptions appeared on the ground, but the radiance of the formation had already begun to shatter. At this time, an elder's expression suddenly changed and he shouted, "Ancestor! Don't worry about her. The ancestral hall is the eye of the formation. Once the formation is destroyed, the ancestral hall will be destroyed as well." The Luo clan's ancestral hall was a place to worship their ancestors, so it was extremely meaningful. If the Luo clan's ancestral hall was destroyed in the hands of their generation, then they would really be too ashamed to face their ancestors. However, Luo Jianyan was already enraged. He said coldly, "There's still time. I'll kill this vile spawn before the formation is destroyed." On Luo Fei Hong's side, Mo Yezi sighed and said, "Now that you've made a move, you and the Luo family will never rest until one of you is dead." Luo Fei Hong said calmly, "From the moment the Luo family decided to betray me, the result was already decided." Mo Yezi shook his head and said, "You guys take Fei Hong and rush out. I'll buy some time and bring up the rear." As soon as he finished speaking, Mo Yezi took out 4 swords from the secret space box. These 4 swords were shining brightly. They were 4 godly weapons. As Mo Yezi poured his true qi into the swords, the 4 swords carried sword qi and flew towards Luo Jianyan. Even though Mo Yezi had never cultivated any martial techniques and had no combat ability, this did not mean that he did not have the slightest ability to resist. As a grand master of weaponsmithing, Mo Yezi had no lack of weapons. To others, a god weapon was an existence that could only be chanced upon by luck, but to Mo Yezi, as long as he had enough materials, forging a god weapon was not too difficult. These 4 long swords were personally forged by Mo Yezi. Every day, he would nourish them with his own blood essence and qi. Moreover, Mo Yezi had asked a few Taoist masters of the real martial arts cult to carve a sword formation on them. As long as there was enough real qi at the critical moment, these 4 long swords could automatically display the real martial arts cult's true martial sword formation. Although the power was not too strong, it was enough to delay the enemy for a while. With Luo Jianyan's strength, this sword formation might not be able to stop him, but he would not be able to break it so easily either. Seeing that Mo Yezi had some tricks up his sleeves, Chu Xiu squinted and said, "Kill." As soon as he finished speaking, he took the lead. The heavenly demon dance in his hand was filled with demonic qi, and the first few warriors from the Luo family were killed on the spot. "How dare you!" A warrior from the Luo family in the unity of heaven and man realm rushed out. His gang qi condensed around him, and the sword momentum in his hand had just condensed when he saw Chu Xiu's saber slashing toward him. Chu Xiu had already condensed the saber intent of the 3 blades of Avicii into his bones. With the 3 blades as one, this saber was like a saber of judgment that had been slashed out from hell. It was evil yet dignified. Moreover, Chu Xiu's saber did not give the martialist any chance to dodge at all. At the same time, he had already used the heaven sun gazing at air technique. He had completely seen through the Luo family martialist's escape route and sealed off any chance he had of dodging this saber. At this moment, the warrior from the Luo family felt like an insect hanging on a spider's web. He was surrounded by an inescapable net from all directions. He wanted to struggle, but before he could move, Chu Xiu's saber had already fallen. The gang qi was extinguished, and the weapon shattered. Everyone could only see a smear of blood. The warrior from the Luo family in the unity of heaven and man realm was directly cut in half by Chu Xiu. Blood and internal organs spilled out. This terrifying scene immediately made the warriors from the Luo family in the unity of heaven and man realm stop where they were, not daring to move. The Luo family actually had some warriors at the unity of heaven and man realm, such as warriors of the same generation as Luo Tianyang and some elders of the Luo family. They were all at the unity of heaven and man realm. However, Chu Xiu's saber was a bit too terrifying. Killing people was like killing chickens. A great expert at the unity of heaven and man realm could not even withstand one saber strike from him. Was there anything more terrifying than this? With the power of Chu Xiu's saber, Chu Xiu and the others had even passed through the front hall. However, no one from the Luo family dared to stop them. Seeing this scene, even Ying Bailu could not help but say, "The Luo family is about to be crippled." For an aristocratic family, it was normal for them to be weak. Even the tides of the world rose and fell, let alone a small aristocratic family like the Luo family. But now, the Luo family did not even have the courage to do anything. With so many people facing Chu Xiu and Luo Fei Hung, they were actually so afraid that they did not even have the courage to make a move. This was indeed a bit too cowardly. Uncle Fu, who was behind Ying Bailu, asked, "Young master, should we make a move or just watch?" Ying Bailu said indifferently, "Let's just watch. The Luo family is already crippled. There is no point in making a move to save the Luo family at this time. Such a Luo family does not even have the qualifications to form an alliance with my Ying family. In the past, the only valuable thing in the Luo family was Luo Fei Hung. Unfortunately, the Luo family has forced him away. This way, the Luo family is no different from trash. What value do they have?" Ying Bailu did not want to save the Luo family, but someone else wanted to. To be precise, they did not want to save the Luo family. They just wanted to make things difficult for Chu Xiu. This person was Li Yuan. Li Yuan was the crown prince's confidant. But in reality, apart from being the crown prince's confidant, he had not made any contributions to the crown prince, LV Longji. Even when he was put in an important position under LV Longji, it was not because he had made any great contributions. It was because he was more reliable in handling matters. In the past, Li Yuan didn't think too much about it since he didn't have the chance to do so. But now he happened to see Chu Xiu, the fellow who had once caused great trouble for the crown prince. If he taught Chu Xiu a lesson this time, although it wouldn't be considered a great merit, it would still be good to make the crown prince happy. Therefore, Li Yuan thought about it and said to Chen Do, "Eunuch Chen, given the current situation, should we help the Luo family?" Chen Do touched his chin. If he was not a eunuch, this would be the posture of stroking his beard and thinking. Unfortunately, Chen Do did not have a beard, so this action seemed redundant. Help the Luo family? But the Luo family did not directly choose to join His Highness. They only want to build a relationship with His Highness. They are not considered our people. If we help the Luo family, are you sure that the Luo family will be grateful and join the Crown Prince? If not, then we will suffer a great loss. Li Yuan smiled and said, Eunuch Chen, you said before that His Highness often gnashed his teeth at Chu Xiu. Previously, His Highness had concerns and could not make a move against Chu Xiu. Now, we can use the excuse of helping the Luo family to deal with the rebels to attack Chu Xiu. This excuse should be enough, right? Chapter 446. The fight within the Luo clan was not that intense. In fact, in Chu Xiu's opinion, the level of trash in the Luo clan was beyond his imagination. On the other side, Mo Yezi made his move. Countless sword chi crisscrossed and blocked Luo Jianyan's path. Although the sword formation formed by the four divine weapons was clearly not a match for Luo Jianyan, Chu Xiu was about to kill his way out. To be more accurate, he was running away. This was because, apart from Chu Xiu killing a cultivator from the Luo clan, the other cultivators from the Luo clan were so frightened that they did not dare to make a move. To be honest, even Chu Xiu felt that it was a little unbelievable. If it was a group of loose cultivators, it would be fine. After all, those loose cultivators were divided at heart. Even if there were benefits or the threat of death in front of them, they would not want to be the first to die. But now, the other party was from the same clan. They were bound together for good or bad. Based on Luo Feiheng's previous actions, it would not be strange if this group of people rushed over crazily with bloodshot eyes. But now, they were so scared that no one dared to make a move. The Luo clan was really hopeless. But at this moment, a whistling sword chi approached Chu Xiu from behind. The sword chi was extremely sinister and carried a gloomy chill. It seemed to be able to tear the air apart. There was no sound at all. If it were not for Chu Xiu's sharp senses, he would not have been able to detect the sword chi. Chu Xiu raised the heavenly demon dance in his hand. Wherever the long saber pointed, demonic chi erupted, directly shattering the sword chi. But at this time, the sword chi contained a chill that flowed into Chu Xiu's body. It actually started to freeze his meridians. Chu Xiu frowned. He formed the lion seal in his hand and a powerful force dispersed all the different kinds of chi. Only then did he manage to suppress the chill. But at this moment, a whistling wind exploded. On the other side, someone blasted out a punch. Astral chi exploded. The power was also extraordinary. Chu Xiu snorted coldly. He formed the great Vajra wheel seal in his hand and slammed it down. Buddhist light and astral energy exploded and blasted that person away. Beside Chu Xiu, Eunuch Chen held a pitch-black rapier that gave off a deep chill and pointed it at Chu Xiu. On the other side, Li Yuan was also staring coldly at Chu Xiu, his eyes filled with killing intent. Chu Xiu frowned. The Luo clan's people had not made a move, but LV Longji's people had made a move. This was a thorny problem. Based on the exchange just now, Chu Xiu could tell that Eunuch Chen's strength was not weak. There were no mediocre people from the Imperial Palace, not to mention that he was the personal eunuch supervisor of Crown Prince Lu Longji. It was the same for Li Yuan. Putting aside this person's future, although he had not made a living in Jianghu, he had been trained by Duke Lin's mansion with all their resources since he was a child. He had accumulated considerable strength in the imperial court and was considered strong among warriors of the same level. Why? Has the Luo clan completely surrendered to the imperial court? Do you need the imperial court to take care of this kind of thing? Chu Xiu said lightly. Before the Luo clan's people could speak, Li Yuan sneered and said, Chu Xiu, don't talk about Jianghu and the imperial court. You were born in the Guanzhong torture room, but you have cooperated with the imperial court. Not only the Eastern Qi imperial court, but also West Chu and Northern Yan. Since the Luo clan has chosen to be on good terms with the crown prince, we can't turn a blind eye to this matter. Hand over Luo Feiheng and leave the Luo clan, then we won't make things difficult for you. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't be able to walk out of the Luo clan's door today. As Li Yuan's voice fell, Nie Donglu also walked out with a smile on his face and said, Brother Li is right. Chu Xiu, you've been involved in too many things, and your hands have stretched too far. There are so many things in Jianghu, and you want to meddle in all of them. This time, I'm afraid you won't get what you want. Nie Donglu had a smile on his face, but his heart was filled with killing intent. Since the last time he attacked Lu Fengxian, he and Chu Xiu had formed an irreconcilable enmity. Originally, Nie Rinlong had told Nie Donglu that Chu Xiu was not easy to deal with, and it was best not to make a move without absolute confidence. But today, Chu Xiu made him see an even stronger threat, not only because of Chu Xiu, but also because of others. Today, Chu Xiu and the others could go against the Luo clan for Luo Feiheng. In the future, people like Luo Feiheng and Xie Xiaolu would naturally do the same for Chu Xiu. Whether it was Lu Fengxian or Xie Xiaolu and Luo Feiheng, none of them were easy to deal with. Even the weakest Mo Tianlin had a place in the younger generation of Jianghu. Since these people were Chu Xiu's friends, they were destined to be his enemies in the future. Nie Donglu had enough reason to make a move. Most importantly, Nie Donglu could not understand how a person like Chu Xiu could make friends with people like Lu Fengxian, who were willing to die for him. In terms of friends, Nie Donglu had a lot of them. It was not an exaggeration to say that he had 10 or even 100 times more friends than Chu Xiu. Not to mention Northern Yan, even in Jianghu, Nie Donglu had countless good friends. No matter where he went, he was familiar with many people. But Nie Donglu knew that although he seemed to have a lot of connections, he could not find anyone like the people around Chu Xiu, who would disregard their own interests to help others. Chu Xiu looked at Li Yuan, Nie Donglu, and the others, then turned to Luo Feiheng and smiled helplessly. I think you made a mistake in asking me to help this time. If I hadn't come, it would have been easier for you guys. If Chu Xiu hadn't come this time, Luo Feiheng and Xie Xiaolu's strength would have been enough to kill their way out of the Luo family. It was the same in the original plot. At that time, there was no Chu Xiu, but Xie Xiaolu, Mo Tianlin, and Mo Yezi should have been there. Things went smoothly. But in the end, Chu Xiu did not expect that he would attract so much hatred. The Crown Prince's people and Nie Donglu had appeared. It was even more troublesome than in the original plot. Luo Feiheng waved the blood spear red kite in his hand and raised his eyebrows. So what if more people come? We're going to fight anyway. Let's kill our way out. From the moment Luo Feiheng made the decision to break ties with the Luo family, she was ready to fight to the death. Even if there were more people, she would have been prepared, let alone now. Chu Xiu let out a long sigh and said, Then let's do it. But you're seriously injured now. Just hide at the back. As soon as he finished speaking, the long saber in Chu Xiu's hand flickered with a deep demonic and bloody aura. With a ferocious aura, it slashed down towards Nie Donglio's head. The person Chu Xiu wanted to kill the most was Nie Donglu. At this time, he should kill Nie Donglu the most. He had offended the Crown Prince, LV Longji. Even if he killed the old eunuch and Li Yuan, LV Longji's people would still cause trouble for him in the future. Nie Donglu could be considered Chu Xiu's old enemy. Most importantly, it would be difficult to kill this guy. A gentleman does not stand under a collapsing wall. Nie Donglu was not a gentleman, but he was more careful than a gentleman. Compared to the previously impulsive Xiahou Wujiang, Nie Donglu could be said to be extremely careful. Once there was any sign of trouble, he was guaranteed to be the first to escape. Then, he would continuously find trouble for Chu Xiu. It could be said that he was extremely annoying. Therefore, when he saw Nie Donglu again, Chu Xiu's killing intent rose immediately, and he turned to attack him. On the Luo family's side, the Luo family warriors who had been frightened by Chu Xiu saw that Chu Xiu was surrounded by 3 people. They were emboldened, and they turned to attack Xie Xiaolu and the others. Chu Xiu and the others might not be able to defeat them, but could they not defeat the others? Under the siege of the crowd, the people who were about to escape from the Luo family were delayed again. Nie Donglu let out a long laugh. The universe rotated in his hand, and powerful Gang Qi kept spiraling in his hand, resisting Chu Xiu's blade. Although the power of Chu Xiu's blade, which was condensed with powerful devil Qi and his own blood Qi, was shocking, Nie Donglio's heaven and earth cloud hand could control the universe, and it could attack and defend. At this time, it had already counteracted the power of Chu Xiu's blade. At this time, Li Yuan and eunuch Chen began to join forces to attack Chu Xiu. The two of them worked well together. In the past, when they were under Crown Prince LV Longji, they had worked together a lot. Eunuch Chen, as LV Longji's personal chief eunuch, was also a great expert at the unity of heaven and man realm. He had often given pointers to Li Yuan and the others. The thin sword in Eunuch Chen's hand was evil and strange, and so was the way he walked. When the sword stabbed out, the gang chi was not like that of other great experts at the unity of heaven and man realm, where the sword chi and sword gang burst out over 100 feet with astonishing power. Instead, his sword was extremely soft. It looked like a casual sword stab, but it was aimed at the vital parts of the body. The small sword light was extremely condensed, and even Chu Xiu's gang chi could not completely defend against it. Li Yuan was good at close combat techniques such as fist and foot. His physical cultivation was not weak, and his martial arts path was open, so he could cooperate perfectly with Eunuch Chen. Facing a pincer attack from the two of them, Chu Xiu took a step forward in an instant. The killing intent around him soared into the sky, and he had already stepped into the selfless killing realm. The heaven demon dance was dyed with a layer of strange blood-red color. The long saber slashed out horizontally, forcing Eunuch Chen to retreat. At this moment, Li Yuan punched out. Chu Xiu's left hand formed the great Vajra wheel seal, and with a loud bang, Li Yuan was sent flying. The powerful force made Li Yuan, who cultivated a body tempering technique and had a strong physical body, turn pale. Fighting 1 against 3, Chu Xiu had indeed used his powerful martial arts technique to suppress the 3 of them at the beginning of the battle. However, as the battle went on, he felt that his strength was not as strong as he wished. The 3 of them were not simple people. There was no need to talk about Eunuch Chen. Chu Xiu could easily kill some weaker unity of heaven and man realm warriors, but he could not kill an expert like Eunuch Chen. Li Yuan and Nye Donglu were also considered outstanding existences among warriors of the same level. In a one-on-one battle, they could not win against Chu Xiu. However, under the siege, Chu Xiu was unable to finish them all off in a short period of time. Chapter 447. Chu Xiu was fighting 1 against 3, and one of them was an oneness of heaven and man expert. Although he could not do anything to the 3 of them, the 3 of them could not do anything to Chu Xiu either. This kind of battle result could already be said to be astonishing. Even the gazes of the people present shifted between Chu Xiu, who was fighting, and Ying Bailu. They did not know who was stronger between the two. Of course, it seemed that Ying Bailu was stronger. After all, Ying Bailu was already in the oneness of heaven and man realm, while Chu Xiu was only in the 5 cheese collecting in origin realm. However, the people could also see that Chu Xiu was almost at the peak of the 5 cheese collecting in origin realm. It was only a matter of time before he stepped into the oneness of heaven and man realm. When the two of them were almost at the same level, it was unknown who would win. However, in this chaotic battle, Chu Xiu was not defeated even though he was fighting 1 against 3. There was someone who could not hold on anymore, and that was Mo Yezi. After all, Mo Yezi was only a weapon refiner at the Martial Dao Grandmaster realm. If he were to fight a Martial Dao Grandmaster head-on, he would not be able to last long. Even if his 4 magic weapons could form the true martial sword formation, it was still an inanimate object. Its power was completely different from the true martial sword technique performed by the experts of the true martial sect. At this time, he was almost unable to stop Luo Jianyan. Moreover, Luo Jianyan was still in a state of rage. Today, the Luo family had lost both their reputation and their reputation. In fact, it was not uncommon for the major sects and families in Jianghu to betray their masters and ancestors. Every sect had a few traitors. This was a very normal thing. However, no one was like the Luo family. The descendants of the Luo family had destroyed the relics and trump cards left by their ancestors. They simply wanted their family to be destroyed. Of course, that was what Luo Feiheng thought. Luo Jianyan could imagine how the Jianghu would judge the Luo family in the future. Even the Wu County Luo family might become a laughingstock in Jianghu. What's more, the Luo family's formation from Wu Prefecture had been destroyed by Luo Feiheng in front of so many martial artists. If the news got out, would the other forces that had a grudge against the Luo family be tempted to make trouble for them? After all, this could be said to be the Luo family's most declining period. Luo Jianyan felt a headache when he thought about this. Therefore, Luo Jianyan simply stopped thinking and attacked furiously. This time, he must not let Luo Feiheng escape. Under Luo Jianyan's crazy attack, the sword formation formed by the 4 god weapons was already a little unstable. As Luo Jianyan brandished the long sword in his hand, the true martial sword formation began to tremble. In the end, the countless sword astral swords condensed into one, drawing upon the power of the heavens and earth to form a majestic sword, astral swords nearly 100 zhong in length. It whistled down and directly smashed into the true martial sword formation. Immediately, a loud sound rang out. Cracks appeared on one of the divine weapons, causing the true martial sword formation to begin to collapse. Seeing that Mo Yezi was about to collapse, Chu Xiao also frowned. Chu Xiao had experienced the strength of a martial Dao grandmaster once, when Nie Renlong attacked him. It was definitely a power that he could not match. Although Luo Zhonian was much weaker than Nie Renlong, a martial Dao grandmaster was still a martial Dao grandmaster. No matter how weak he was still a martial Dao grandmaster. Chu Xiao was not confident that he could stop Luo Zhonian at this moment. Therefore, at this moment, Chu Xiao did not want to delay any longer. The earth energy around him surged to the extreme, and in an instant, Chu Xiao's eyes became hollow. At this moment, he performed the heaven sun gazing at air skill to the extreme. Everything around him had condensed into silk threads in Chu Xiao's eyes, dancing and changing rapidly. Amidst the countless silk threads, Chu Xiao's mental energy skyrocketed to the extreme. His figure wandered in the endless fist wind and sword aura. Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen were shocked to discover that the two of them seemed to be feeding Chu Xiao moves at this moment. As soon as they attacked, Chu Xiao had already prepared to dodge in advance. At this moment, they had already attacked with all their might, and they could not retract their moves halfway. This feeling made them extremely depressed, and they had the urge to vomit blood. However, within these few moves, Chu Xiao had completely shaken off Eunuch Chen and Li Yuan's entanglement, and his figure appeared in front of Nie Donglu. In an instant, Nie Donglu felt an extreme sense of danger. Without saying a word, he performed the heaven and earth cloud-reaching hand. Powerful earth energy was condensed by him, one clear and one turbid. The two forces were like a Tai Chi diagram, defending in front of him while he retreated rapidly. However, at this moment, Chu Xiao was prepared to attack with all his might to break the stalemate. How could he let Nie Donglu escape just like that? With a slash of the blade, the force of the blade accurately struck the boundary between the clear and turbid forces of the universe. As if it was a simple move, the Tai Chi diagram suddenly shattered. Chu Xiao's hand formed the external lion seal. In an instant, the sound of Buddha exploded like thunder. The powerful force rang in Nie Donglio's ears, immediately making him feel dizzy. Even if he used all his spiritual qi to suppress it, he could not completely suppress the feeling. This made Nie Donglu feel like vomiting blood. It was this move again. Chu Xiao's external lion seal was similar to the Great Light Temple's lion's roar of 9 transformations. They were both martial arts techniques that could not be used to defeat the enemy in one move, but could not be parried. When used suddenly, it would catch the enemy off guard. Even if the enemy managed to defend in time, it would still have some effect. Chu Xiao took one step at a time. With each step, he formed an external lion seal. The sound of thunder and explosions seemed to be continuous, ringing in Nie Donglio's ears. This made his spiritual qi start to dissipate, and blood flowed uncontrollably from his ears and nose. Seals like the external lion seal, which consumed a lot of energy, were continuously used by Chu Xiao. His consumption was not small. By the time he got close to Nie Donglu, his face was already pale. Seeing Chu Xiao's appearance, Nie Donglu gritted his teeth and decisively stopped retreating. Instead, he gathered all the spiritual qi in his body and slammed his palm down on Chu Xiao. Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen were right behind him. As long as he could hold them off for a moment, Chu Xiao would definitely die. However, before his palm could explode, Chu Xiao's great demonic blood technique had already begun to be used at full force. As the seals in Chu Xiao's hands were performed, boundless demonic qi stirred up his qi and blood. This made Nie Donglu let out a muffled grunt, and a look of shock appeared in his eyes. Previously, Chu Xiao had wasted his spiritual qi and used so many external lion seals to fight Nie Donglu head-on. He had not done it to affect Nie Donglio's attacks, but to directly use the external lion seal to shake Nie Donglu until he bled, so that his body would no longer be like an iron bucket. Only then would he be able to use the great demonic blood technique to its fullest. Actually, Nie Donglu knew about the great demonic blood technique. After all, he had participated in the great battle on Floating Jade Mountain. However, Nie Donglu had not expected the power of the great demonic blood technique to be so terrifying. It was so terrifying that he could not suppress it even with all the spiritual qi in his body. Now, Nie Donglu finally understood why Han Ting from the Sword Hut had only been willing to take out the blood-killing blade and not the great demonic blood technique. This was not because the Sword Hut was stingy, but because this technique was truly evil to the extreme. Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen, who were behind him, had already attacked again. There was only one move left for Chu Xiao to make his move. With a wave of one hand, boundless demonic qi mixed with qi and blood was extracted from Nie Donglio's body. At the same time, the qi and blood in Chu Xiao's body also erupted. The two forces of qi and blood merged into one, becoming an evil blade completely condensed from blood. It slashed down on Nie Donglio's head. Any spiritual qi or defense was shattered by the blood blade. After all, Nie Donglio's strength was not ordinary. Even if Chu Xiao used the great demonic blood technique, he would not be able to extract all the qi and blood in his body. However, Nie Donglu did not have enough qi and blood. Chu Xiao used his own qi and blood to make up for it. After all, the blood-killing blade only consumed qi and blood. No matter whose qi and blood it was, the stronger the better. Because they had the same source of power, Nie Donglio's spiritual qi defense was reduced to nothing under the blood-killing blade. However, Nie Donglio's reaction was fast. After noticing the characteristics of the blood-killing blade, he did not choose to passively defend. Instead, he gathered all the spiritual qi around him and stirred the world. The explosive spiritual qi affected the surrounding spiritual qi of the world, forming a cyclone in front of him. However, although the cyclone looked extraordinary, it was still shattered by Chu Xiao's evil blood-killing blade. There was a loud bang, and blood splattered everywhere. Nie Donglu was sent flying. He clutched a hideous wound on his chest and spat out blood. His eyes were filled with shock. Chu Xiao raised his eyebrows. As expected, he still could not kill Nie Donglu at this time. Furthermore, he did not have the chance to kill Nie Donglu now. Behind him, Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen had joined forces to attack. One's fist force was extremely powerful, while the other's sword force was ruthless and evil. The two attacks were already upon him. Even if Chu Xiao used Heaven's Sun gazing at air, he would not be able to dodge completely. He could see the trajectory of the opponent's attack, but he was too fast to dodge. Therefore, in that instant, Chu Xiao held the Duga seal in his hand and condensed all the spiritual qi in his body into one. He was as immovable as a mountain, invincible. There was a violent explosion of spiritual qi, and Chu Xiao's figure was sent flying. A stream of blood flowed down the corner of his mouth. In a hurry to defend, even Chu Xiao's Duga seal could not block the attacks of these two. However, for the current Chu Xiao, it was enough. Kill! With a loud shout, Chu Xiao took the lead and fled out of the Luo family. Behind him, Luo Fei Heng and the other two also erupted with their strongest power. They attacked directly, killing the Luo family warriors in front of them and fleeing together. Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen looked at each other and did not continue to attack. They only wanted to find trouble with Chu Xiao. It was not an irreconcilable hatred. At this time, since Chu Xiao had already escaped, they naturally did not have to waste their energy to chase after him. Of course, based on the power that Chu Xiao had displayed just now, after Nie Donglu was seriously injured, they really did not dare to chase after him. Chapter 448. Mo Yezi let out a sigh of relief when Chu Xiao and the others successfully escaped. He retreated as he fought and left the Luo residence. Mo Yezi was actually quite confident. He knew that even if he lost, Luo Zhonyan would not kill him. In the Jianghu, there were some people that most martial artists didn't want to offend. For example, the West Chu miracle doctor, angering Yama, Feng Buping. Although he had a strange temper, he didn't want to offend anyone because he didn't know when he would need someone's help. There were also array masters, divination grandmasters, and so on. Although these people were not as good as ordinary martial artists in terms of combat power, they could be of great help to martial artists in the aspect they specialized in. From this they could make terrifying connections. Mo Yezi was one such grandmaster in smithing. Ever since he stepped into this realm, he had forged countless weapons for others, including countless precious weapons and divine weapons. All of these connections were enough to make Luo Zhonyan feel apprehensive. Although Luo Zhonyan did not want to chase after Mo Yezi, he did not want Luo Fei Heng and the others to escape the Luo residence. But before he could chase after them, a Luo family disciple shouted anxiously, "Ancestor! If we don't suppress the array in the ancestral hall, the entire ancestral hall will collapse. Luo Jionian glared at the direction Luo Fei Heng and the others escaped in. He had no choice but to turn around and run towards the ancestral hall. At this time, Luo Fei Heng and the others had escaped more than 10 miles away. When they saw that no one was chasing after them, they stopped and began to recover their injuries and internal energy. Mo Tianlin looked at Luo Fei Heng and teased. You are now homeless. Where do you plan to go from now on? But Eastern Qi, I advise you not to stay here. You were really ruthless this time. I'm afraid that from now on, the Luo family will not rest until you are dead. Mo Yezi said, Little Fei Hong, it's not a big deal if you want to stay in Eastern Qi. My Mirror Lake Manor may not have much power, but I do have some influence in Jianghu. If I take you in, even Luo Jionian won't dare to say anything. At the side, Xie Xiaolu also said, That's right. Senior Mo has a place for you, and so does our World Alliance. Brother Chu's Guanzhong torture room is also a good place to go. Luo Jionian can only flaunt his power in the Luo clan, but no one will listen to him anywhere else. Luo Fei Heng shook his head and said, I appreciate everyone's good intentions, but I've troubled you enough this time. I already have a plan for the future. At this point, Luo Fei Heng's eyes flickered coldly and said, The Luo clan thinks that they can revive the Luo clan by relying on a marriage alliance and a piece of trash like Luo Feiyun. Now, I'll show the Luo clan that I alone will surpass the entire Luo clan. Mo Tianlin and the others did not speak. They thought that Luo Fei Heng said those words out of anger. After all, although the Luo family was now in decline, they still had some foundation. Even if Luo Fei Heng had stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, he was still alone after all. In terms of foundation, he could not compare with the Luo family. However, only Chu Xiu knew that if the situation did not change too much, Luo Fei Heng's future would surprise many people. Luo Fei Heng turned to Mo Yezi and Chu Xiu and said, Senior Mo Brother Chu, I'd like to borrow something from you. What is it? Luo Fei Heng said in a deep voice, Weapons and reputation. I want to develop my forces in the dark, but I have nothing at the moment, so I need weapons as a lure. However, Senior Mo, don't worry. I only need a small number of weapons in the beginning. Later on, I will naturally take out the materials and price to buy weapons from the Mirror Lake Manor. Mo Yezi waved his hand and said, It's a small matter. My Mirror Lake Manor may not have many things, but it has a lot of weapons. If you want divine weapons, it might take some effort. However, there are some precious weapons. I and the others in the Mirror Lake Manor have countless precious weapons. You can take as many as you want. Luo Fei Heng shook his head and said, This is a different matter. We still have to follow the rules of the Jianghu. After saying that, Luo Fei Heng looked at Chu Xiu and said, As for Brother Chu, I want to borrow your reputation. Chu Xiu subconsciously rubbed his chin. He seemed to know what Luo Fei Heng wanted to do, so he asked, The 9-branch division? Luo Fei Heng nodded and said, That's right. Although I have some reputation in the Jianghu, it's not as good as Brother Chu. Moreover, I know that I'm a woman, so I'm naturally weak. Brother Chu, when you said that we should work together to establish the 9-branch division, I only thought it was interesting. But now, I can feel the potential of the 9-branch division. Therefore, I want to borrow the reputation of the 9-branch division and Brother Chu to secretly recruit some people. If Brother Chu is at ease, then lend me your reputation. I dare say that within 3 years, I can make the 9-branch division have a heaven and earth turning change in both numbers and power. After saying that, Luo Fei Heng raised her head. Her charming face revealed a trace of confidence and pride. This made Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin feel a bit unfamiliar. This was because they had never seen this side of Luo Fei Heng. In the past, they knew that Luo Fei Heng was very strong, but that was all. More than that, they felt that Luo Fei Heng was a bit eccentric. As a woman, her actions were more manly than a man's. In the past, when they went to the brothel to drink, Luo Fei Heng, as a woman, would steal women with them. She was even more popular than them. Therefore, Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin had always thought that Luo Fei Heng was a maverick who loved women and pleasure. This kind of habit was very similar to Mo Tianlin. This was also the reason why Mo Tianlin and Luo Fei Heng could become good friends. However, Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin didn't know that people had two sides. When Luo Fei Heng became serious, Her methods and abilities would definitely surpass everyone's imagination. Chu Xiu threw the 9-dragon coin in his hand to Luo Feiheng and smiled. I'll wait for that day. Towards Luo Feiheng, Chu Xiu was very confident. In the original storyline, Luo Feiheng was also chased by the Luo clan. In the end, she truly started from scratch and established the Bu Air Palace, developing it into a peak power in the underworld. It was dozens of times stronger than the previous Luo clan. And now, Luo Feiheng's starting point was higher than in the previous life. If there were no accidents, the speed of her rise would also be faster than in the previous life. Xie Xiao Lu and Mo Tianlin didn't say much. The 9-branch division was originally proposed by Chu Xiu. Although Chu Xiu said that the 9-branch division didn't have a leader, as Chu Xiu's strength became stronger and his reputation in the underworld grew, Xie Xiao Lu, Mo Tianlin, and the others subconsciously treated Chu Xiu as their leader. Although they didn't say it explicitly, it could be seen from some details and attitudes. In the underworld, strength was still the most important thing. Although they had a good relationship, strength was strength. As long as one was a martial artist, they would subconsciously take this as their priority. Since Luo Feiheng had already made her decision, Chu Xiu and the others didn't say anything else. They chatted for a while more before leaving. In fact, the one who should feel the most melancholy was Mo Tianlin. Offending the Luo clan was a small matter for Chu Xiu and Xie Xiao Lu, but for Mo Tianlin, the pressure from his clan would probably be huge. However, no one could help him with this. Only Mo Tianlin could bear it himself. After Chu Xiu left, he didn't return to Guangzhou. Instead, he first found a place to recuperate in eastern Qi. The Luo clan's matter was resolved, but his own grudge was not resolved. Nie Donglu was a slippery fellow. Chu Xiu had the strength to kill him, but he didn't have the opportunity to do so. However, this time, Crown Prince LV Longji subordinates, Eunuch Chen and Li Yuan, attacked him. Chu Xiu didn't intend to let this matter go. For a gentleman to take revenge, 10 years is not too late. If Chu Xiu wanted to take revenge, it would depend on his mood and the opportunity. Chu Xiu wasn't a magnanimous person. He didn't intend to let this matter rest. If others knew that Chu Xiu dared to take revenge on the Crown Prince of Eastern Qi in Eastern Qi's territory, they would definitely think that Chu Xiu was crazy. However, sometimes, things had to be looked at from another angle. So what if he was the Crown Prince of Eastern Qi? Before he became the Emperor, the Crown Prince was still the Crown Prince. Even in the original plot, the seemingly mediocre Emperor of Eastern Qi, Lu Haochang, was still alive. At the very least, when Chu Xiu transmigrated, Lu Longji was still the Crown Prince. Moreover, in the land of Eastern Qi, there were many people who wanted to cause trouble for the Crown Prince. Chu Xiu was very good at taking advantage of the situation. As for whose situation he could take advantage of, the only person Chu Xiu was familiar with in the Eastern Qi imperial family was the second prince, Lu Longguang. Chu Xiu believed that as long as he made an appearance, it would be easy to borrow this person's power. Moreover, Chu Xiu had another thought in mind, and that was to seize Li Yuan's good fortune. Right now, Li Yuan wasn't very eye-catching in the Eastern Qi imperial court. He was just a small official in Eastern Qi. Even under the Crown Prince, Lu Longji, he was the Crown Prince's confidant, but his status couldn't be compared to Lu Longji's personal eunuch, Chen Do. If the current Li Yuan were to be evaluated by others, he would at most be someone with decent strength and ability. There was nothing outstanding about him. The only thing that allowed Li Yuan to soar into the sky and become the North Garrison King of Eastern Qi was the good fortune inheritance that he had obtained. Chu Xiu didn't know the exact time when Li Yuan obtained the inheritance, but in the original plot, Chu Xiu knew the approximate time and place. If he killed Li Yuan and waited at that place, would he be able to obtain the good fortune and inheritance on Li Yuan's behalf? This kind of thing was a little uncertain, but in any case, the first step was to kill Li Yuan. Then, Chu Xiu would go to that place to try his luck and see if he could obtain the inheritance that belonged to Li Yuan. After the plan was made, Chu Xiu recuperated for half a month. When his injuries had completely recovered to their peak, he went straight to Daliang city of Eastern Qi to look for the second prince, Lu Longguang. Chapter 449. Among the three countries, Eastern Qi was the largest and the most prosperous. As the capital city of Eastern Qi, Great Liang City was naturally the same. It was bustling with activity, and the city was filled with nobles and countless Jianghu experts. However, no one dared to cause trouble here. As the capital city of Eastern Qi was the most heavily guarded place. There were countless experts from the military and the imperial palace. Anyone who dared to cause trouble here would have to be tired of living. Chu Xiu wanted to find the second prince, LV Longguang, but he could not just meet him on a whim. He first had to find someone he was familiar with, and that person was Feng Zhenqi, the commander of the Breaking Edge Battalion. Every battalion of the Dragon Riders' Imperial Army was actually an independent existence, responsible for all kinds of tasks. Even the target they were loyal to was different. The Breaking Edge Battalion was not located outside the city, but in a mansion in the eastern part of Great Liang City. The mansion seemed very low-key. It was just a seemingly ordinary black mansion, with the words Breaking Edge Battalion written in large golden letters. There was also the dragon insignia of the Dragon Riders' Imperial Army. However, on the street outside the Breaking Edge Battalion's mansion, there were almost no martial artists coming or going. These martial artists were not idiots, and they knew what kind of place this was. This was the Dragon Riders' Imperial Army that belonged to the royal family of Eastern Qi. If they accidentally provoked them, they would not even know how they died. Chu Xiu knocked on the door, and 2 Dragon Riders' Imperial Army wearing black light armor immediately surrounded him. They sized up Chu Xiu and asked in an unfriendly tone, "Who are you?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Please go and inform Sir Feng that Chu Xiu has come to visit. He will know who I am." The 2 Dragon Riders' Imperial Army looked at each other. One of them went in to make the report, while the other stayed outside to keep an eye on Chu Xiu. Fortunately, Chu Xiu's strength was relatively strong, and he revealed the cultivation of the 5 Qis gathering in the origin. If it was anyone else, they would have been locked up and interrogated by the Dragon Riders' Imperial Army. The Imperial Dragon Riders belonged to the Imperial family, so if outsiders came looking for them, it would most likely not be a good thing. After a while, Feng Zhenqi walked out. Seeing that it was Chu Xiu, he asked in surprise, "Why are you here?" During the case of Qiu Zhenxing at the Pegasus Ranch, Feng Zhenqi had indeed dealt with Chu Xiu a lot. If it were not for Chu Xiu, the second prince would not have set the crown prince up. However, the cooperation between the 2 parties was only for mutual benefit. Chu Xiu was still a person from the Guanzhong torture room. Feng Zhenqi was a little surprised to see Chu Xiu again. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "It's not convenient here. Let's talk inside." Feng Zhenqi frowned, but he still invited Chu Xiu to a meeting hall and asked, "Can you tell me what's the matter now?" "I want to see the second prince," Chu Xiu said in a low voice. Feng Zhenqi frowned and was about to say something, but he heard Chu Xiu say, "Lord Feng, don't refuse, and don't ask me why I want to see the second prince. I can only say these words to the second prince. In short, it's good for the second prince, and there's no harm. Moreover, this is the Great Liang City of Eastern Qi. I dare to play tricks in other places, but I don't dare to be presumptuous here. In that case, what is Lord Feng afraid of?" Feng Zhenqi felt that Chu Xiu's words made sense. Chu Xiu was only a cultivator at the 5 Qis unification stage. In the capital of Eastern Qi, even if he had any schemes, he wouldn't be able to carry them out. Therefore, Feng Zhenqi thought for a moment and brought Chu Xiu to the second prince, LV Longguang. LV Longguang had been conferred the title of King Liang, and his fief was the richest county in Qi, Liang County. However, apart from sending his trusted subordinates to manage the fief, LV Longguang rarely visited his own fief. He spent most of his time in Great Liang City or in the military. This made Crown Prince LV Longji gnash his teeth in hatred and fear. Lu Haochang had never forced LV Longguang to go to his fief. This proved that in Lu Hao's mind, there was no difference between the 2 of them. LV Longji, the Crown Prince, was merely a title. LV Longguang felt a little strange when he saw Chu Xiu again. The last time he saw Chu Xiu, LV Longguang's deepest impression of Chu Xiu was Chu Xiu's boldness and greed. At that time, Chu Xiu was just an inspector of the Guanzhong torture room. He could be considered as a relatively outstanding cultivator among the younger generation, but he wasn't considered to be in the upper echelons of the Guanzhong torture room. However, it was Chu Xiu who dared to negotiate with him, the second prince of Eastern Qi, and even extorted the forget-me-killing fist from him. This courage left a very deep impression on LV Longguang. Seeing that Chu Xiu had come to him again, LV Longguang couldn't help but ask, "Chu Xiu, Why have you come to me this time? Could it be that you're prepared to rely on this king? To be honest, if Chu Xiu was really willing to rely on him, LV Longguang would be very happy. After all, Chu Xiu's strength and potential were there for all to see. As long as one wasn't blind, they could see it. However, for LV Longguang, compared to strength and potential, Chu Xiu's current reputation was more important. He was a young hero ranked 6th on the Longhu list. If he could recruit Chu Xiu, he could directly push Chu Xiu to the public. Even the young hero ranked 6th on the Longhu list was willing to follow him. Wouldn't this make him look very virtuous? Chu Xiu smiled and shook his head. Your Highness must be joking. Hall leader Guan has treated me well. How can I betray the Guanzhong torture room? Although I, Chu Xiu, am not a good person, I still know the word loyalty. Hearing Chu Xiu's words, LV Longguang's interest was greatly reduced. He leaned back on the chair and asked, Then why did you come to see me this time? If you can't give me a proper explanation, then you're just making fun of me. You know the consequences. Chu Xiu lightly said, Since I went through so much trouble to ask General Feng to bring me to see your Highness, I naturally have something that can satisfy your Highness. What is it? Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, If I can help your Highness attack the Crown Prince's reputation and weaken his strength, will your Highness be satisfied? Hearing Chu Xiu's words, LV Longguang immediately sat up straight and frowned. You want to help me deal with the Crown Prince? Then what do you want? LV Longguang still remembered Chu Xiu's character of not getting up early without benefits. Last time, when Chu Xiu brought out the evidence, LV Longguang had to pay the price of the annihilating heaven and destroying earth annihilating oblivion killing fist. Now, what did Chu Xiu want? Chu Xiu shook his head and said, I don't want anything. It's just that ever since I helped your Highness last time, the Crown Prince bore a grudge against me. His subordinates have been causing me a lot of trouble. I'm a very vengeful person. It's not my character to not return the favor after being slapped in the face. If someone wants to cause trouble for me, then I'll return the favor and let them know the price of causing trouble for me. This matter has only happened recently. If your Highness hasn't heard of it, you can ask others. LV Longguang really didn't know what happened to the Luo family. He was the second prince of Eastern Qi. Other than some major events in the martial world, he couldn't be bothered to care about them. Fighting for the throne and developing his own strength were the most important things to him. But just because he didn't know, it didn't mean that others didn't know. LV Longguang asked an old eunuch with a pale face behind him. Eunuch Li, what's going on? Eunuch Li immediately transmitted a message to LV Longguang, telling him everything that had happened to the Luo family. He also emphasized the fact that Eunuch Chen and Li Yuan, the Crown Prince's subordinates, had attacked Chu Xiu. LV Longguang nodded and looked at Chu Xiu with a strange look in his eyes. He said, If that's the case, how are you going to help me deal with the Crown Prince? You only have the strength of the 5 Qis in the Origin realm. I'd like to see if you can hurt the Crown Prince's foundation with your meager strength. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, Your Highness, you're wrong about one thing. I've said before that I'm here to help you deal with the Crown Prince. If I was alone, I could have easily left after taking my revenge. Why would I come here to look for your Highness? It's because I don't have any power in Eastern Qi that I've come to look for your Highness. I want to borrow your Highness's strength to help you deal with the Crown Prince. LV Longguang was stunned when he heard this, and then anger appeared in his eyes. He sneered and said, Chu Xiu, are you here to make fun of me? I thought you had something on the Crown Prince or had a plan. I didn't expect you to come here empty-handed. You don't have anything, and you want to borrow my strength to deal with the Crown Prince? What right do you have? If that's the case, I might as well do it myself. Why should I lend my strength to you? Chu Xiu smiled, pointed to himself, and said word by word, Because I'm Chu Xiu. To be frank, your Highness, you have powerful subordinates like General Feng and Eunuch Li, but you can't find a single one who really has the ability to set up a trap. Otherwise, your Highness wouldn't have been in a stalemate with the Crown Prince for so long. And I, Chu Xiu, was born in the wilderness, but in less than 2 years, I've gone from an inspector who just entered the Guanzhong torture room to a torture officer in charge of Guanxi. When my boss was in charge of Guanxi, discipline was lax, and the forces of Jianghu were rampant, to the point that they didn't even care about the Guanzhong torture room. But since I took over Guanxi, I, Chu Xiu, have been the only one who can speak. The same power can play a different role in the hands of different people. So this time, Your Highness, you can take a gamble and bet on your confidence in me. If Your Highness trusts me, then lend me some of your power. If Your Highness doesn't believe me, then I'll turn around and leave. I won't disturb Your Highness. I'll take revenge another day. It's all up to you, Your Highness. After Chu Xiu finished speaking, he looked at LV Longguang without saying a word. To be honest, his words not only stunned LV Longguang, but also Feng Zhenqi and Eunuch Li. They had seen arrogant people, but they had never seen someone as arrogant as Chu Xiu. He was so full of himself. But thinking about it carefully, Chu Xiu was telling the truth. This was his military record, and it was also the reason why he could stand in front of LV Longguang and say these words. Chapter 450. LV Longguang sized up Chu Xiu without saying a word. If it had been someone else boasting so shamelessly in front of him, LV Longguang would have directly thrown that person out. However, this person was Chu Xiu. Just as Chu Xiu had said, his experience in the Guanxi region and his current status were proof of Chu Xiu's ability. This was confidence and also a fact. Whether or not to trust Chu Xiu was something that LV Longguang had to consider. After a long while, LV Longguang asked with a sullen face, "If I lend you my power, but you screw it up, what should I do?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "If I take action, I won't screw it up. There are no ifs. Besides, I'm not your subordinate, so there's no need for me to make a military pledge here. I've said before that if Your Highness has confidence in me, then hand over the power to me. If not, then I'll turn around and leave. Promises are just empty words before things are done. Also, I have something else to say. Your Highness, you and the Crown Prince have to fight it out. Last time, you won with His Majesty, but what about now? Therefore, even without me, I reckon that Your Highness will still make a move against the Crown Prince. Now, it's just that I'm the leader, so there's not much difference." LV Longguang pondered for a moment. Perhaps his previous deal with Chu Xiu had given him some confidence. He said in a deep voice, "All right, I'll believe you this time. However, you have to tell me what your plan is first. Similarly, I'll also send Feng Zhenqi and Eunuch Li to follow you. This king has never liked to play tricks. I'll make it clear in advance. If you want power, I'll give it to you. However, Feng Zhenqi and Eunuch Li are here to monitor you. As long as you don't do anything that harms this king's interests, the two of them will only monitor you and listen to your commands. They will not interfere with your actions." Regarding LV Longguang's decision, Chu Xiu didn't say much. If LV Longguang really believed him unconditionally, then either LV Longguang was stupid, or there was something fishy about it. Therefore, Chu Xiu just nodded and said, "Your Highness should do this." "All right, tell me about the first step of your plan," LV Longguang said in a deep voice. Chu Xiu said, "The first step of the plan is actually very simple. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. I need information about the Crown Prince and his trusted subordinates." Eunuch Li, who was at the side, said in a sharp voice, "Official Chu, don't worry. We have intelligence on the Crown Prince's side. Recently, the Crown Prince has been very low-key. Nothing major has happened." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "It's not enough. This information isn't enough at all." Eunuch Li frowned and said, "What do you mean by this, Official Chu? Could it be that you doubt the accuracy of our information?" "The Crown Prince has just been reprimanded by His Majesty, and he's keeping a low profile and enduring patiently right now. How could he possibly do anything?" LV Longguang had fought the Crown Prince for so many years, so he naturally knew the importance of information. So, the information under his command was managed by Eunuch Li. Now when he heard Chu Xiu speak in this way, it seemed as if Chu Xiu didn't trust him, and this caused Eunuch Li to instantly be slightly displeased. Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, "Eunuch Li, please don't take offense. I'm not saying that your information is wrong, but it's too little. Eunuch Li, your subordinates are limited, so things like information have to be obtained from specialized places. Only there would you be able to obtain extremely accurate and detailed information." "Where?" Eunuch Li was bewildered. Wind-sweeping pavilion. Before Southbridge City's wind-sweeping pavilion, Chu Xiu had just left not too long ago, yet he'd returned at this moment. If it was in terms of information, then no power in the world could compare to wind-sweeping pavilion, and the information gathered by Eunuch Li's subordinates could only be considered as gossip in the underworld when compared to Wind-Sweeping Pavilion. So, Chu Xiu's first step was naturally to come to Wind-Sweeping Pavilion to obtain information. Fang Zhenqi and Eunuch Li were following behind Chu Xiu. Both of them were great experts at the unity stage. According to LV Longguang, even though they usually listened to Chu Xiu's commands, the meaning behind their actions was very obvious, and it was to monitor Chu Xiu in the open. When they arrived at the entrance of Wind-Sweeping Pavilion, Chu Xiu said to Eunuch Li, "Eunuch Li, please wait here. I'll enter Wind-Sweeping Pavilion with Lord Fang." Eunuch Li frowned and said, "What's the meaning of this? You're not allowing me to enter as well?" Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Eunuch Li, please don't take it to heart. Wind-Sweeping Pavilion is a sect in the underworld after all, and it's rather sensitive towards members of the imperial family. It's fine for me to follow Lord Fang who's changed into casual clothes, but Eunuch Li, even if you've changed your clothes, the characteristics of a member of the imperial family are still very obvious, and it's easy for Wind-Sweeping Pavilion to misunderstand." Southbridge City was the headquarters of Wind-Sweeping Pavilion, and there were many grandmasters in the martial Dao here. So, it was practically obvious that Eunuch Li was a eunuch with a single glance. Even though there were many people in the underworld that cultivated themselves into eunuchs, there were only a few who were willing to castrate themselves for the sake of refining their divine palaces. Most eunuchs were from the imperial palace. Eunuch Li grunted lightly, yet he didn't flare up. Chu Xiu had a sense of propriety when he spoke. He didn't directly say that he was afraid the members of Wind-Sweeping Pavilion would notice that Eunuch Li was a eunuch, so they wouldn't allow him to enter. Instead, he directly said that Eunuch Li was a member of the imperial family, and this caused Eunuch Li to have a rather good impression of him. Even though he was a eunuch, he hated terms such as eunuch and eunuch. Chu Xiu brought Fang Zhenqi into Wind-Sweeping Pavilion. The martial artist who welcomed Chu Xiu last time saw Chu Xiu again, and he hurriedly went up to greet him with a chuckle. "Official Chu, what news do you intend to buy from my Wind-Sweeping Pavilion again?" Chu Xiu said, "It's a big deal this time. I'll have to trouble you to invite Pavilion Master Qi over." If it was an ordinary martial artist at the 5 Qi's origin stage, it would be very difficult for Chu Xiu to personally invite a grandmaster like Qi Yuanli to discuss business even with his status. However, when this martial artist saw the scene of Qi Yuanli personally welcoming Chu Xiu last time, he thought that there was some relationship between Qi Yuanli and Chu Xiu. So this time, he swiftly brought Chu Xiu and Fang Zhenqi to a guest room, and he hurriedly went to invite Qi Yuanli over. Qi Yuanli frowned when he heard that Chu Xiu wanted to see him again. The last time he gave Chu Xiu a piece of information, it was because he wanted to form a good relationship with him. This time, Chu Xiu came again. This time, he really didn't know what was good for him. Did he really think that Wind-Sweeping Pavilion was a charity that was willing to give away anything? However, Qi Yuanli did not show it. He still smiled and pushed the door open. "Chu, what news are you here to buy this time? Actually, if it's not big news, you can just buy it from your subordinates. You don't have to come to me every time." Qi Yuanli also saw Fang Zhenqi at this time, but he did not know who Fang Zhenqi was. Although Wind-Sweeping Pavilion sold information, it was not to the extent that they could recognize a random person's identity. Chu Xiu did not have time to exchange pleasantries with Qi Yuanli. He went straight to the point and said, "Pavilion Master Qi, I'm here to discuss a big business with you this time. This business needs to be done by you." Qi Yuanli frowned. "What big business?" Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "It's about the Eastern Qi royal family's business. Pavilion Master Qi, do you dare to do it?" Qi Yuanli's eyebrows twitched when he heard that. This business was really big. What kind of news about the royal family? If you are talking about the entire royal family, then I'm sorry. Even if Guan Siyu came personally, I wouldn't dare to sell it. Chu Xiu shook his head. "Of course I don't have such a big appetite. What I want is information about the crown prince. The more detailed, the better. You should have that, right?" When he heard that Chu Xiu only wanted information about the crown prince, Qi Yuanli heaved a sigh of relief. "I do have that." Qi Yuanli looked at Chu Xiu in surprise. He vaguely guessed why Chu Xiu wanted information about the crown prince. The Luo family's matter was just a small matter to LV Longguang, so it wasn't worth mentioning. However, to the people of the underworld, it was gossip material. He naturally knew that Chu Xiu had been besieged by the Crown Prince's subordinates. However, Qi Yuanli added, Chu, the Crown Prince is the Crown Prince of Eastern Qi, after all. There is a lot of detailed information about him, and there are many secret items. If you want them, they will be very expensive. Chu Xiu glanced at Feng Zhenqi, and Feng Zhenqi immediately took out the purple gold from his secret space box. Although he wanted to take revenge, LV Longguang would also benefit from it. Therefore, he naturally wouldn't pay for the information himself. The purple gold in Feng Zhenqi's hands was neatly smelted into the shape of gold bricks. Each brick weighed more than 100 taels. As Feng Zhenqi piled up the purple gold bricks on the table, Qi Yuanli hurriedly said, That's enough. It's enough. He glanced at Feng Zhenqi in surprise. This guy was really generous. This was purple gold after all. To be able to smelt it into purple gold bricks so neatly, he must have a powerful background. However, Qi Yuanli didn't ask too much. Wind Sweeping Tower was usually the most gossipy faction, and they wanted to collect all kinds of information. However, they were very tight-lipped when it came to their own guests. Qi Yuanli asked someone to bring a jade book and copied all the information about the Crown Prince. He imprinted it into a simple cultivation jade slip and handed it to Chu Xiu. Qi Yuanli said in a low voice, Chu, this contains the information you want. However, this is related to the royal family, so it's best not to spread it. Of course, even if it does, it will have nothing to do with Wind Sweeping Tower. As long as Chu steps out of Wind Sweeping Tower's doors, everything will have nothing to do with Wind Sweeping Tower. Chu Xiu nodded and said, Don't worry, Tower Master Qi. I know the rules. With that, Chu Xiu left Wind Sweeping Tower with Feng Zhenqi. After meeting up with Eunuch Li, the three of them read the contents of the jade slip together. After reading it, Eunuch Li's forehead was covered in sweat. Only now did he realize how far behind Wind Sweeping Tower was in terms of collecting information. He actually didn't notice so many movements on the Crown Prince's side. This was a dereliction of duty. Chapter 451. Back in Great Liang City, LV Longguang asked Chu Xiu, Did the Crown Prince really make a move? Chu Xiu smiled and said, Eunuch Li and the others have also seen the news. Your Highness can directly ask Eunuch Li. Eunuch Li's expression was a bit ugly as he cupped his hands at LV Longguang and said, Your Highness, this old servant has failed in his duties. The Crown Prince has indeed made a big move recently. Ever since the Crown Prince was punished by the Emperor to reflect at home, the Crown Prince has been very honest and low-key on the surface. But in reality, the Crown Prince has secretly sent people to contact all the wild powers in the southwest. The 5 families, 8 families, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds, wanting to bring them all under his command. Once he succeeds, the Crown Prince will completely control the southwest and even control most of the trade routes between West Chu and our Eastern Qi. The southwest that Eunuch Li spoke of was an area close to the west of Eastern Qi, close to the 10,000 mountains. Although the area was large, it was sparsely populated, making it seem desolate and barbaric. There were no counties set up there and it was only known as the Southwest. There were only a few states within it. Originally, this place could be said to be looked down upon by no one, but in the last several hundred years, this place had become an important trade route between West Chu and Eastern Qi. Although there were many barren mountains and dense forests, making the road difficult to traverse, the distance was very close, so there were many merchants coming and going. This place gradually became popular with merchants and naturally formed a power. It was the 5 families, 8 families, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds that Eunuch Li spoke of. Although there were nearly 50 of these powers, their strength was not very strong. After all, the oldest of them was only 100 years old. But regardless of whether these powers were strong or not, once they joined the Crown Prince's command, it would be a huge boost to the Crown Prince's power. Moreover, because the Crown Prince already controlled a strong trade route, his own income would also increase crazily. For LV Longguang, this was definitely not a good thing. LV Longguang sneered and said, Not only did he collude with Jiang Yuan, but now my eldest brother dares to collude with these wild powers in the southwest. He really doesn't know what's good for him. This prince will go to father and report him. I'm sure he won't be able to bear the consequences. At this time, Chu Xiu said lightly, Your Highness should calm down first. It's useless for you to go. Perhaps you will be reprimanded by His Majesty. LV Longguang frowned and said, Why? Chu Xiu said, This time, His Highness the Crown Prince's actions are different from last time. Jiang Wenyuan's identity was special. If the Crown Prince cooperated with him, it would be a taboo. Now that the Crown Prince was recruiting these ruffians, the meaning was completely different. Although the Jianghu and the court stand in opposition, it is not impossible for them to work together. Your Highness, do not forget the battle between Northern Yan and Eastern Qi. At that time, the Northern Yan was able to win because the Northern Yan royal family worked together with the Northern Yan martial arts forces. Now, His Majesty has also realized his previous mistake and has begun to take the initiative to cooperate with the martial arts forces of Eastern Qi. Even the White Tiger Hall has been merged with Eastern Qi. You should know this, Your Highness. Therefore, now the Crown Prince's behavior is no longer a big deal to His Majesty. He will even praise the Crown Prince for being flexible. If Your Highness were to complain about this matter now, I'm afraid you will be the one reprimanded because you failed to understand His Majesty's meaning. LV Longguang was not stupid. After hearing Chu Xiu's explanation, he immediately understood. LV Longguang was so angry that he crushed a teacup and said coldly, "This plan is definitely not something that my useless eldest brother could come up with. There must be someone around him who gave him the idea." Chu Xiu said calmly, "It doesn't matter if there is someone who gave the Crown Prince the idea or not. Anyway, as long as the plan is completed, the Crown Prince's power will increase greatly." LV Longguang waved his hand and looked at Chu Xiu. He said in a deep voice, "What kind of power do you want? I can give it to you. There is only one condition, and that is to completely mess up the Crown Prince's plan." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "Of course it's an elite force. Lord Feng's Dragon Riders and Eunuch Li's subordinates should also have a group of people. Lend them to me, and I promise to give Your Highness a satisfactory result." This time, LV Longguang did not hesitate. He waved his hand and said in a deep voice, "All right. From today onwards, Feng Zhanqi and Eunuch Li's subordinates, including the two of them, will listen to your orders." Walking out of the prince's mansion, Eunuch Li asked Chu Xiu, "Official Chu, what should we do now?" Eunuch Li had made a mistake in the matter of wind-sweeping brothel, so his attitude towards Chu Xiu had become much more humble. Feng Zhanqi did not say anything. The Dragon Riders' Imperial Army was strict in their orders. Since His Highness had already said to listen to Chu Xiu, he would naturally do whatever Chu Xiu wanted him to do. As long as Chu Xiu did not threaten His Highness's interests, he would definitely not have any objections. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "The 5 factions, 8 families, 10 sects and 23 strongholds. To put it bluntly, these powers are just a motley crew with clay chickens and pottery dogs. If His Highness's subordinates were to go all out, it would not be difficult to kill them. However, doing so would cause too much of a commotion, and it would be easy for the Crown Prince to notice. Secondly, it would affect His Highness's reputation." Eunuch Li frowned and said, "You said it yourself. There are no top-notch sects among those dozens of powers. They are just a motley crew. How could they affect His Highness's reputation?" Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Don't forget His Highness's identity. The imperial court massacring the martial arts sects is a very sensitive matter. Unless His Highness does not wish to have any cooperation with the martial arts sects in the future, it is better to be cautious about this matter." Eunuch Li was born in the imperial palace. Eastern Qi trained eunuchs in batches. They were mainly taught how to serve their masters, and martial arts were secondary. As for abilities and whatnot, no one taught them those things. It was all up to them to comprehend on their own. Therefore, although Eunuch Li was much older than Chu Xiu and had been by LV Longguang's side for so many years, in terms of seeing the big picture, he was really not as good as Chu Xiu. Hearing that Chu Xiu had considered more than him, Eunuch Li did not say anything. He said directly, "Since official Chu has considered all these, then tell us your plan. Lord Feng and I will assist official Chu from the side." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "There is no hurry. There are 5 schools, 8 families, 10 factions, and 23 strongholds. There are dozens of powers, and it is impossible for them to be of the same mind. Sometimes, attacking the enemy from the inside is easier than attacking from the outside. The intelligence given to us by Wind-Sweeping Tower is very complete, and there is even a general information on these dozens of powers. Let me pick a few targets first, and then slowly make arrangements. There is still time." At this time, Chu Xiu's expression was somewhat gloomy. Eunuch Li, who had always been known for his feminine temperament, felt a chill in his heart. In terms of killing people, as LV Longguang's personal eunuch, Eunuch Li might not have killed fewer people than Chu Xiu. But in terms of those who had indirectly died in the hands of Chu Xiu, Eunuch Li could not compare to Chu Xiu. 3 days later, in one of the largest brothels in Great Liang City, Emerald Jade Pavilion, Chu Xiu, Feng Zhenqi, and Eunuch Li were sitting in a private room drinking wine, but they did not ask for a single girl. Feng Zhenqi was fine, but Eunuch Li was sitting there feeling uncomfortable. He was a eunuch. Why did he come to such a place? If His Highness had not ordered him to listen to Chu Xiu, Eunuch Li would definitely think that Chu Xiu was humiliating him. Just when Eunuch Li felt extremely uncomfortable and wanted to ask Chu Xiu what he was doing here, Chu Xiu knocked on the table and made a gesture to keep quiet. With his eyes slightly closed, a powerful spiritual force bloomed from Chu Xiu's body like silk threads, spreading in all directions. At this moment, Feng Zhenqi and Eunuch Li were shocked. What a terrifying spiritual force! Feng Zhenqi and Eunuch Li were both experts at the unity of heaven and man realm, but even they could feel the strength of Chu Xiu's spiritual force. It was so strong that it made them tremble. Even if the people of the Xiahou clan came, their spiritual force would not be comparable to Chu Xiu's. In fact, although Chu Xiu's spiritual force was strong before, it was not strong to this extent. But after killing Zhang Chufan and obtaining the orthodox inheritance of the demon heart hall, the great art of mental demons rotation and the 9 major forms of soul assimilation, Chu Xiu's spiritual force could be said to have directly skyrocketed to another realm. The martial arts of the demon heart hall could be said to coexist with evil and miraculous. The great art of mental demons rotation was a method that specialized in cultivating spiritual force, while the 9 major forms of soul assimilation was an existence that combined spiritual force with martial arts and even Buddhist martial arts, which was even more miraculous. Now, if Chu Xiu fought with Xiahou Wujiang again, even if he only used spiritual force, he could completely crush Xiahou Wujiang. At this time, Chu Xiu's spiritual force had also undergone a strange change. His spiritual force was like a coiled silk thread, spreading to other places in the Emerald Jade Pavilion like a spider's web, light and yet tough. Except for the martial arts grandmasters or the experts who specialized in spiritual force, no one could notice this change. And at this time, in the Emerald Jade Pavilion, there was naturally no such person. This move was one of the 9 major soul techniques, the silk soul net. According to the inheritance of the cultivation technique, when one mastered this technique, they could use it with all their strength, and everyone within a radius of several thousand feet would be enveloped by this soul net. Every single thread could entangle a martial artist's soul and Yuan Shen, instantly taking a person's life. Of course, the current Chu Xiu was still very far away from this level. At present, this cultivation method was only used by Chu Xiu to eavesdrop. All the sounds in the entire Emerald Jade Pavilion were transmitted to Chu Xiu through the silk soul net and reflected into Chu Xiu's mind. Then, Chu Xiu separated 2 strands of spiritual force and transmitted them to Feng Zhenqi and Eunuch Li. After blocking out the chaotic sounds, 2 familiar voices once again appeared in Chu Xiu's and the other's ears. One was Eunuch Chen, and the other was Li Yuan. Chapter 452. Eunuch Chen and Li Yuan were also in the Emerald Jade Pavilion's box, and it was not too far from the box where Chu Xiu and the others were. In addition to Eunuch Chen, there was also a young man in his 20s in the box. His strength had not even reached the innate realm, and his behavior was frivolous and sloppy. Li Yuan looked at the young man with a hint of contempt, but he still said politely, "Did young Master Zhang have a good time in Daliang City? Tomorrow, young Master Zhang will return to the southwest. At that time, please tell Master Zhang about your experience in Daliang City. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is very sincere." Young Master Zhang laughed and said, well said, well said. Since His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is so generous, I will definitely tell my father when I go back. Let the Iron Sword clan follow His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and live well in the future. At this time, young Master Zhang's face showed a trace of wretchedness and said, "Since I am leaving tomorrow, I must have a good time today. My expenses in the Emerald Jade Pavilion." Li Yuan's eyes showed a trace of disgust, but he still said with a smile, "Young Master Zhang, just enjoy yourself. I have already told the boss that all your expenses here will be recorded in my account." Young Master Zhang laughed and said, "Lord Li is very kind. Then I won't stand on ceremony." As he spoke, young Master Zhang directly pushed the door open and shouted, "Where is the madam? Hurry up and find me girls. I want 6, no, 10. I want them to be tall and have big breasts." The Emerald Jade Pavilion was the top brothel in Daliang City. It was not an ordinary brothel. Those who came here were all high-ranking officials and nobles, and they were all people of status. It was really rare to find someone as vulgar as young Master Zhang. Someone was angry and wanted to say something, but when they saw that young Master Zhang came out of the box and was told who the box belonged to, they immediately dared not say anything. Although Li Yuan was not a big shot in the Eastern Qi Imperial Court, he was the confidant of His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Offending Li Yuan was the same as offending the Crown Prince. Therefore, in the city of Daliang, there were not many who dared to offend Li Yuan. After young Master Zhang left, Li Yuan closed the door and sneered disdainfully. Iron Sword Sect Master Zhang Tiantu can be considered a character. With a broken iron sword, he founded Iron Sword Sect and became the head of the 5 sects in the southwest. Who would have thought that his son would be so disappointing? Wine, women, avarice, and arrogance, as if he has never seen the world. This time, the Crown Prince was prepared to recruit people from the 5 schools, 8 clans, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds. In reality, the Crown Prince had already made his move. The 5 schools, 8 clans, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds were ranked according to the former. The 5 schools were the strongest, while the 23 strongholds were almost all bandits and were the weakest. Among them, Iron Sword Sect was the head of the 5 schools. Sect Master Zhang Tiantu was an expert half a step to the supreme power realm. In the wilderness of the southwest, which was full of dense forests, he relied on a broken iron sword to become the head of the 5 schools. He was definitely a character, and he was also the person that the Crown Prince paid special attention to. Now, it was almost certain that he was ready to rely on the Crown Prince. Because of this, he sent his own son, Zhang Chengyong, to let him experience Daliang City and see the Crown Prince's final sincerity. These days, Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen had brought Zhang Chengyong to eat, drink, and have fun. They wanted to completely win him over, and make Iron Sword Sect sincerely submit to His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. However, this young Master Zhang was really too inexperienced. He was obsessed with wine, women, avarice, and anger. He was like a lecherous demon. Some of his actions in the past few days made Li Yuan feel extremely embarrassed. If not for His Royal Highness the Crown Prince's instructions, he would not want to accompany such a useless person to wander around. Eunuch Chen said slowly, "Calm down. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is only doing this for his father, Zhang Tiantu. The more useless this Zhang Chengyong is, the better. As long as he is won over, Iron Sword Sect will definitely stand on His Royal Highness the Crown Prince's side. 5 schools, 8 clans, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds. As long as more than half of these forces stand on our side, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince will succeed. Iron Sword Sect is the head of the 5 schools and is a target that we must recruit." Li Yuan snorted softly and said, "I know. Then let him be free and unrestrained for another day. He is just a country bumpkin who has never seen the world. He will not be able to enjoy the bustling scene of Great Liang City in the southwest." At this time, Li Yuan suddenly thought of something. He took out a brocade box and handed it to Eunuch Chen, saying, "Eunuch Chen, this is the South Sea Black Pearl that His Royal Highness asked me to collect last time. He said that he wanted to give it to Miss Qingqing. It is not appropriate for me to enter Miss Qingqing's chamber, so I hope Eunuch Chen can help me pass it to her." Hearing Li Yuan's words, Eunuch Chen immediately frowned. That Miss Qingqing was the Emerald Jade Pavilion's top courtesan, Han Qingqing. Long ago, she was fancied by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Since then, she had become His Royal Highness the Crown Prince's exclusive property. She no longer solicited guests, but she still lived in the Emerald Jade Pavilion. It was not that LV Longji was stingy, but he was the Crown Prince after all. It would be fine if he took a commoner as his concubine, but if he married a prostitute, it would not sound good. Therefore, he could only sneak around like this. Eunuch Chen frowned and said, "His Royal Highness has many enemies. At this time, he should focus on developing his own strength. What is the meaning of being infatuated with a prostitute all day long? Not only will it affect his energy, but it will also be easy for others to use against him." Li Yuan, You must find a chance to talk to His Royal Highness about this. Li Yuan only smiled and did not say much. It was not his first day with the Crown Prince, so he naturally knew what should be said and what should not be said. Regarding the Crown Prince's private matters, he could not interfere with others' words, but Li Yuan would definitely not say anything. Eunuch Chen was also a sly old fox. One look at Li Yuan's expression and he knew what he meant. However, he did not say much and only snorted softly. He took the brocade box and turned to leave. Li Yuan also left. At this time, in the private room where Chu Xiao and the others were, Chu Xiao retracted his soul string net. Eunuch Li's expression was gloomy as he said, "I did not expect the Crown Prince to actually take things to this step. Official Chu, what should we do now?" Chu Xiao did not say anything. He only made a shushing gesture to Eunuch Li. At this time, Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen had already left. Zhang Chengyong was here playing with a woman, so they were not in the mood to watch. Therefore, Chu Xiao swaggered into the Jade Pavilion. He opened the door of Zhang Chengyong's private room and was greeted by a flesh-colored wave. It was tall and bumpy, which made people dizzy. Zhang Chengyong was 1 against 10, so he was quite good at playing. However, Chu Xiao's heart was not disturbed at all. Before he transmigrated, Chu Xiao was also a person who had seen the world. What kind of movies had he not seen and what kind of games had he not seen? Zhang Chengyong was just a small thing. Zhang Chengyong was startled when he was suddenly interrupted. However, before he could curse, he saw that Chu Xiao's eyes were as deep as an abyss, pulling him in. The other women had also fallen into a deep sleep. Using the skill of extinguishing heaven, destroying earth and soul transfer to deal with a warrior who had not even reached the innate realm was child's play. At this time, Zhang Chengyong was like a puppet in Chu Xiao's hands, without the slightest autonomy. After putting on his clothes, Zhang Chengyong followed behind Chu Xiao in a daze and went straight to the top floor of the Jade Pavilion. The top floor had long been closed to the public, because it was the residence of the top beauty, Han Qingqing. The Crown Prince had treated Han Qingqing quite well and had even specially assigned 2 Xiantian realm cultivators to stand guard here. However, when faced with Chu Xiao, the 2 cultivators did not even make a sound before they were completely controlled by the great art of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth and soul shifting. With their memories wiped, they would not remember that anyone had ever been to the top floor. At this time, in the room on the top floor, a beautiful woman was playing with a black pearl in a brocade box. Her eyes showed a look of surprise. This woman was Han Qingqing. Although she was the top beauty of the Jade Pavilion, a prostitute was still a prostitute. Han Qingqing had never thought that one day she would be chosen by the Crown Prince. Even at this time, Han Qingqing was still fantasizing in her heart. Could she succeed in the future and become the Crown Prince's wife? At this time, the door of the room was pushed open. As soon as Han Qingqing raised her head, she saw a pair of eyes as dark as ink, and lost consciousness. Chu Xiao patted Zhang Chengyong's shoulder, and Zhang Chengyong immediately pounced on Han Qingqing. Chu Xiao turned around and went out, closing the door. Immediately, there were sounds of heavy breathing coming from inside. After a few minutes, the sound of heavy breathing inside stopped. Chu Xiao pushed the door open and saw Zhang Chengyong still holding the unconscious Han Qingqing in his arms. He had a confused expression on his face, and he thought he was having a wet dream. As a country bumpkin from the southwest, when had Zhang Chengyong seen such a prosperous place like Great Liang City? Almost as soon as he arrived here, he was indulging in pleasure. When Li Yuan had brought him to the Jade Pavilion, he had seen Han Qingqing once. At that time, Zhang Chengyong had wanted to sleep with this woman, but Li Yuan had warned him. After all, she was the Crown Prince's woman, and whoever touched her would die. As the top beauty of the Jade Pavilion, Han Qingqing's appearance was naturally one of the best in the Jade Pavilion. Since then, Zhang Chengyong had been yearning for her. However, although Zhang Chengyong was a good-for-nothing, he was not an idiot. He knew which women he could touch and which women he could not. But when he woke up this time, the women around him were gone, and the one he was holding was Han Qingqing. Could it be that he was still having a wet dream? At this time, seeing Chu Xiao push open the door, Zhang Chengyong suddenly thought of something. He was about to cry out in surprise, but Chu Xiao directly revealed his 5 qis in the origin state, and the powerful evil blood qi that he had condensed was surrounding him. The killing intent made Zhang Chengyong shiver all over. Looking at Zhang Chengyong, Chu Xiao said lightly, "First, shut up." Second, put on your clothes. I don't like talking to naked men. If you can't do these two things, I will kill you. Chapter 453. It was true that Zhang Chengyong was a good-for-nothing. Moreover, he was a greedy and lustful person who could not do anything and could not eat enough of anything. However, Zhang Chengyong was someone who had come from the wilderness of the southwest. He had an advantage over most warriors, and that was that he could adapt to the circumstances. In the wilderness of the southwest, there were very few large cities and prefectures. There were dense forests and wilderness everywhere. The bandits of the 23 stockade villages killed people and plundered their goods, and the land was stained with blood. Zhang Chengyong's father, Zhang Tiantu, had risen to power in such an environment. Therefore, although Zhang Chengyong's cultivation was not good, he knew one thing. When faced with a powerful force that he could not match, the first thing he had to do was admit defeat. Therefore, under Chu Xiu's murderous aura, Zhang Chengyong immediately shut his mouth and put on his clothes as fast as he could. Then, he looked at Chu Xiu with an unusually obedient expression. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Do you know who the woman beside you is?" Zhang Chengyong nodded. It seemed that he had not yet realized that he had slept with the crown prince's woman. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "In this world, there are not many people who can make the crown prince a cuckold. Now that you have done it, don't you feel a sense of accomplishment?" Only then did Zhang Chengyong realize what he had done. His face immediately revealed a look of horror. He had slept with the crown prince's woman. This feeling was really good. It was so good that Zhang Chengyong did not know what to say now. If someone had made him a cuckold, Zhang Chengyong would definitely make that person suffer a fate worse than death if he had the chance. Because of this, he knew what his fate would be. However, at this time, Zhang Chengyong suddenly realized something. He directly knelt down in front of Chu Xiu and said with a sobbing tone, "Hero, save me. I will do anything you ask of me." Although Zhang Chengyong was a good-for-nothing, he was not a fool. Although he had lost a part of his memory, he knew that everything he had done now was inextricably linked to this demon-like fellow in front of him. The other party wouldn't be so bored as to let him sleep with the crown prince's women. Right now, everything was in the hands of the other party. As long as he could live, he was willing to do anything. His father had just stabilized his influence not too long ago. The Iron Sword sect was the head of the 5 sects in the southwest region. Even if he, the eldest young master of the Iron Sword sect, was trash, he could still live a comfortable life. He could not bear to die. Chu Xiu stretched out a finger and said, "First, I'm not a hero. Second, your life and death are not in my hands, but in your father's hands. You won't understand even if I say more. You just need to remember one thing. I'm the second prince's man. When we return to Iron Sword sect, all you need to do is tell your father everything that happened today. He will understand. All right, clean up this place. When this woman wakes up, she won't remember anything. But whether or not she will never remember what happened today depends on your father's attitude. Sometimes, don't choose sides too early." After saying that, Chu Xiu turned around and left, leaving behind a dumbfounded Zhang Chengyong, who wanted to cry but had no tears to shed. After returning to their private room, Eunuch Li and Feng Zhenqi stared at Chu Xiu, dumbfounded. They did not know what to say. Although they did not participate in what happened earlier, they had all witnessed it. It had to be said that Chu Xiu's methods were a little too dirty. It was very underhanded. However, it had to be said that this move was quite effective. What would the crown prince do if the person he wanted to recruit was cuckolded? If the crown prince could tolerate such a thing, could he still be considered a man? If the crown prince could not bear to do it, then all the effort he had put in to recruit Iron Sword sect would be in vain. Hence, the crown prince was stuck between a rock and a hard place. Chu Xiu's move was rather vicious. There was a trace of fear in Eunuch Li's eyes as he looked at Chu Xiu. He could still remember the first time he met Chu Xiu. Back then, Chu Xiu had dared to use evidence to exchange for the sky-extinguishing earth-annihilating oblivion killing fist from LV Longguang. Back then, LV Longguang had asked Eunuch Li what his impression of Chu Xiu was. Eunuch Li's evaluation of Chu Xiu was that Chu Xiu was bold, decisive and greedy. Now, however, Eunuch Li had to add another label to Chu Xiu. Unscrupulous. For Chu Xiu, he only cared about the results, not the process. As long as he could accomplish his goal, Chu Xiu would do anything. He was a person who had no bottom line. Such a person was the most terrifying. Fortunately, Chu Xiu was currently standing on his side. At the same time, Eunuch Li was sneering in secret. This time the Crown Prince had lost his mind. After such a long time, he still came to provoke Chu Xiu. In the past, the Crown Prince had deliberately put on an appearance of being courteous and magnanimous. Even if there was some friction, he wouldn't easily cause trouble for others. Of course, this matter was not LV Longji's fault. It was because LV Longji did not know about it at all. If Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen had really killed Chu Xiu or seriously injured Chu Xiu in the Luo family, then they would have reported it to LV Longji and regarded it as their own contribution. But in the end they failed. Since that was the case, why would they tell others about it? It was not shameful enough. As Eunuch Li thought about it, he shook off these thoughts and asked Chu Xiu, "Official Chu, should we report this matter to the Crown Prince?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Why should we report it to the Crown Prince? Don't think too highly of the Iron Sword sect. If worse comes to worst, the Crown Prince can just give up on recruiting the Iron Sword sect in a fit of anger. There are 5 sects, 8 families, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds. There are so many forces in the southwest. We can just change our target. The Iron Sword sect is just the beginning. Eunuch Li, Lord Feng, it's time to make a move. Show us everyone's strength." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Eunuch Li did not ask any more questions. Instead, he and Feng Zhenqi brought their subordinates over. Through this matter, Eunuch Li and Feng Zhenqi had witnessed Chu Xiu's ruthless methods. Naturally, they did not have any more doubts and left it all to Chu Xiu to handle. Feng Zhenqi's subordinates were a battalion of the Dragon Rider Imperial Army, numbering over 300 men. Despite the small number, every one of them was an elite. Even the weakest among them was at the Xiantian realm. Moreover, the most important thing was not their cultivation level, but the combat prowess of the Dragon Rider Imperial Army. When they were training in the Dragon Rider Imperial Army, they had already experienced hundreds of battles. Later on, when they were assigned to LV Longguang, they had also experienced countless missions. As he sized up the Dragon Rider Imperial Army, Chu Xiu suddenly felt a little emotional. In the past, his cheapskate father was a member of the Dragon Rider Imperial Army. To be more precise, he was just an ordinary soldier, not even a corporal. However, such an ordinary soldier was able to proclaim himself as a tyrant in a small place after leaving the Dragon Rider Imperial Army, becoming the head of a family. From this, one could imagine just how powerful the Dragon Rider Imperial Army was. Other than the Dragon Rider Imperial Army, Eunuch Li's subordinates were also the second prince's elites. Compared to the Dragon Rider Imperial Army, the quality of these people was somewhat uneven. Most of them were unaffiliated cultivators, and in the end, they were recruited by the second prince. Some of their strength was not that bad, but there were also some whose strength was a bit lacking. However, Eunuch Li's group had a great advantage. They had over 600 people, which was double the number of the Dragon Rider Imperial Army. Moreover, even the weakest among them was at the Xiantian realm. These close to 1,000 people were the power that LV Longguang had lent to Chu Xiu. Of course, in reality, LV Longguang's subordinates would definitely be much more powerful than they were now. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "I'll have to trouble the 2 of you to bring these people to the southwest. Remember, your movements must be careful. Otherwise, if the Crown Prince discovers your tracks, don't blame me." Feng Zhenqi and Eunuch Li both nodded. They were not idiots, so they naturally knew to pay attention to this. Right now they were in the dark, and the Crown Prince was in the light. Of course, they had to be careful, and they could not be discovered by the Crown Prince. Feng Zhenqi and Eunuch Li followed behind. Chu Xiu was a step ahead of them, and he followed Zhang Changyong to the southwest. The land of Eastern Qi was rich and prosperous, but the further southwest one went, the less people there were, and the more wilderness and dense forests there were. By the time they truly reached the southwest, there was not a single capital for hundreds of miles. In fact, Eastern Qi did not even have any troops stationed here. They had only left 10,000 people here as a symbol, but in reality, they were just there to show off. This was not because the people of the Eastern Qi imperial court had neglected their duties, but because they knew that even if they sent troops here, it would be useless. The enemy would not attack from here. There were dense forests everywhere in the 100,000 mountains. It was fine for a single person or a small group to travel alone, but if there were a lot of people, they would inevitably be squeezed in the dense forest. Moreover, Eastern Qi was not the least bit afraid of West Chu attacking. Of the 3 countries in the world, West Chu was the least ambitious, and it could be said that West Chu was the weakest. This land had been conquered countless times, but each time West Chu was able to establish a country, it was always a passive defensive role. They rarely attacked other countries. It wasn't that West Chu didn't want to, it was that West Chu couldn't do it. The entire West Chu martial arts world was not weak, but there were too few people in the country and most of it was barren mountains and forests. Not to mention it was not as prosperous as Eastern Qi, it couldn't even compare to Northern Yen. The land was sparsely populated and barren, so the possibility of West Chu ruling the world was zero. Therefore, the West Chu imperial family could only play 2 sides. They would see which side was stronger, Northern Yen or Eastern Qi, and then they would help the other side, fighting to the end. Of course, although the southwest was close to West Chu, the atmosphere was completely different. The people of the southwest were all fierce, and this was reflected in the local martial arts world. The 5 sects, 8 families, 11 schools, and 23 strongholds were the most powerful forces in the southwest. Regardless of whether they were strong or weak, each of them had the experience of exterminating an entire family. It could be imagined just how cruel the southwest was. Chapter 454. The Southwest Iron Sword Clan was located in the southwest Songyang Prefecture, and could be considered as one of the largest sects in the southwest. The Songyang Prefecture was one of the few large prefectures in the southwest. The fact that the Iron Sword Clan could establish a sect in the Songyang Prefecture was enough to prove their strength. It had to be known that it was extremely difficult for a desolate place like the southwest to produce a martial Dao Grandmaster. For Iron Sword sect to have an expert like Zhang Tiantu, who had already stepped into the half-step martial Dao Grandmaster realm, was already very impressive. Moreover, even if there was a martial Dao Grandmaster in the southwest, most of them would not be able to stay. Those martial Dao Grandmasters would either choose to wander in the Central Plains or move their sects to the Central Plains. They would not continue to stay in a remote and desolate place like the southwest. Zhang Tiantu already had this idea. He was in the prime of his life, and it was possible for him to step into the realm of martial Dao Grandmaster in the future. Therefore, Zhang Tiantu chose to accept the Crown Prince's invitation to prepare for the future. If he could really step into the realm of martial Dao Grandmaster in the future, he would prepare to move the Iron Sword Clan to the Central Plains. However, he had no foundation in the Central Plains and was unfamiliar with the place. If he had the help of the Crown Prince, LV Longji, it would be much simpler. The southwest was still too small. Only the Central Plains was his goal. At this time, in the Iron Sword Clan, Zhang Tiantu was wiping a seemingly ordinary broad-bladed iron sword. Zhang Tiantu was in his 60s this year. For someone of his realm, he was still in the prime of his life. In the past, he relied on this iron sword to lay the foundation of the Iron Sword Clan. This ordinary iron sword was also continuously added with good materials and asked some master refiners to reforge it. Finally, an ordinary weapon was transformed into a precious weapon. However, the only thing Zhang Tiantu was worried about now was his son. Zhang Qingyong's talent was not particularly good. Additionally, Zhang Tiantu had devoted himself wholeheartedly to the foundation of Iron Sword sect during Zhang Qingyong's youth. Thus, Zhang Tiantu neglected Zhang Qingyong's education, causing Zhang Qingyong to have many bad habits. Now that he was like this, how could Zhang Tiantu rest assured to pass the Iron Sword Clan to him in the future? Therefore this time, Zhang Tiantu sent Zhang Qingyong to Great Liang City, not only to see the sincerity of the Crown Prince, but also to let Zhang Qingyong get familiar with the Crown Prince, so that he could have a backer in the future. At this moment, someone outside reported that Zhang Qingyong had returned. Zhang Tiantu immediately asked someone to bring Zhang Qingyong in. With a smile on his face, he asked, "How's the scenery in Great Liang City? How does His Highness feel about you?" Zhang Qingyong put on a long face and said dejectedly, "Father, I've caused a huge disaster." Zhang Tiantu's expression suddenly changed, and he quickly said, "What's going on? What did you do?" After Zhang Qingyong told Zhang Tiantu what had happened, Zhang Tiantu's face was as black as ink. He directly slapped Zhang Qingyong's face and scolded, "You're a useless thing." From childhood to adulthood, Zhang Tiantu spoiled Zhang Qingyong very much. He rarely hit him, but this time, Zhang Tiantu really couldn't help it. This idiot was obviously schemed against, causing their Iron Sword sect to be dragged into the struggle between the Crown Prince and the second prince. Moreover, flies don't bite seamless eggs. Now that Zhang Chengyong had fallen into this situation, it was completely his own fault. Zhang Tiantu asked him to go to Great Liang City to see the sincerity of the Crown Prince, and also to build a relationship with the Crown Prince. But in the end, he was actually eating, drinking, and sleeping with women in Great Liang City all day long. Zhang Chengyong didn't dare to refute after being slapped. He just covered his face and said pitifully, "Father, what should we do now? This matter has not been leaked yet. If the Crown Prince knows about it, we'll be finished." Zhang Tiantu thought for a moment, and he said in a deep voice, "The person who schemed against you said that he was the second prince's man?" Zhang Chengyong nodded again and again. Zhang Tiantu coldly snorted, "Now we don't know whether that person is the second prince's man or someone else. He just wants to provoke the relationship between the second prince and the crown prince. But there is still room for redemption. People say that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is broad-minded. If we tell the truth, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince should not blame us for this matter. He also knows that you are also a victim." Zhang Chengyong cautiously said, "But father, if His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is not broad-minded in this matter, what should we do?" Although Zhang Chengyong was an idiot waste, he also knew the truth of judging others by oneself. In any case, if someone dared to make him a cuckold, he would certainly want to tear that person's body into pieces. At that time, why would he care about whether that person was broad-minded or not? Zhang Tiantu sneered, "Those who can achieve great things should be able to endure things that ordinary people can't. Do you think His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is like you? Moreover, in other words, if the Crown Prince really blames our Iron Sword sect for this matter, then it proves that I was wrong about him. The Crown Prince is a narrow-minded person who disregards the overall situation for the sake of a woman. Such a person is not worthy of our Iron Sword sect to rely on. At that time, we can just look for the second prince to rely on." However, at this moment, a voice came from outside the door. "TSK. TSK. Sect Master Zhang is indeed worthy of being called a veteran. You have thought things through clearly and are also very shrewd. Playing both sides, you won't suffer a loss. Unfortunately, Sect Master Zhang, you are a bit too shrewd. You don't know that when it comes to choosing sides, you can't stand on both sides." Chu Xiu pushed open the door and openly appeared in the room. The moment Zhang Chengyong saw Chu Xiu, his face suddenly revealed a trace of horror. He quickly shouted, "It's him! It's him!" Zhang Tiantu's complexion slightly changed. Astral energy erupted from his body, and he suddenly grasped the iron sword in his hand. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu suddenly took a step forward. This step was right beside the spot where Zhang Tiantu's qi was about to erupt. If not for Chu Xiu's step, Zhang Tiantu's sword would have already been unsheathed and slashed at that spot. Zhang Tiantu's eyebrows furrowed. The moment the sword in his hand made a slight movement, he felt a strange qi enveloping him. It was as though no matter what he did, he would fall into the opponent's control. Within the narrow space of the room, the power of Chu Xiu's heaven sun gazing at air technique was displayed to its limit. Even Zhang Tiantu, an expert who had already reached the half-step Grandmaster realm, was forced by Chu Xiu to the point where he did not dare to take action without permission. Zhang Tiantu exhaled deeply and said in a cold voice, "Just who are you?" The person in front of him was so young and had such strength. He broke into the Iron Sword sect alone, and there was not even a trace of abnormality among his own disciples. Zhang Tiantu believed that this person was definitely not a nobody. Chu Xiu faintly said, "My name is Chu Xiu. Sect leader Zhang should have heard of my name. However, this is no longer important. Right now, I am only here on behalf of the second prince." Hearing the two words Chu Xiu, Zhang Tiantu's eyes suddenly revealed a trace of seriousness. Unlike other Jianghu elders who did not care about the younger generation, Zhang Tiantu believed that he was still in the prime of his life. Even though he was in the wilderness of the southwest, he was still very concerned about some of the news of the younger generation in Jianghu. There was no doubt that Chu Xiu had risen the fastest among the younger generation in Jianghu in the past few years. Although Chu Xiu was currently only at the 5 qis collecting in the Origin realm, the number of warriors at the Oneness of Heaven and Man realm who had died in his hands was not just 1 or 2. At the very least, With the miraculous state of Chu Xiu just now, Zhang Tiantu actually did not dare to act rashly. Zhang Tiantu had already regarded Chu Xiu as an opponent of the same realm. Letting out a long breath, Zhang Tiantu said coldly, "What is the second prince trying to do? My Iron Sword sect has not yet officially joined the Crown Prince's banner. You have already used these crafty plots to frame me. Are you trying to push me to the Crown Prince's side?" Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Sect leader Zhang, I have already appeared here. Is it interesting for you to still talk about these insincere things? A straightforward person will not resort to insinuations. I already know the choice your Iron Sword sect has made. Just now you were still hesitating. Do you think I will believe what you said? At present, your precious son has touched the Crown Prince's woman. Even if the Crown Prince is truly magnanimous and forgives you, in the future, when he looks at your Iron Sword sect, especially when he looks at your son, won't he feel uncomfortable? I believe that except for some people with special hobbies, being cuckolded is something that no man can endure. Besides, even if the Crown Prince really tolerates it, it is useless. Right now, only a few people know about this matter. If your Iron Sword sect wishes to join the Crown Prince, then I will spread this news. When that happens, you know the consequences." Zhang Tiantu looked at Chu Xiu. A thick killing intent appeared in his eyes. He spat out the words through gritted teeth. "You are truly ruthless. If this news were to spread, Chu Xiu would be forcing the Crown Prince to kill them. It was not a glorious thing to be cuckolded. Even if the Crown Prince temporarily tolerated it for the sake of the overall situation, if this matter was spread out with great fanfare, the Crown Prince would kill them even if it was for his own reputation." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Sect leader Zhang, forgive me for speaking bluntly. You chose to join the Crown Prince because you want to find a way out for Iron Sword sect and find a future for yourself. If that is all you seek, then there is not much difference between the Crown Prince and the second prince. The Crown Prince only has a righteous title." However, Sect Master Zhang thought about it carefully. Even if the Crown Prince was in the name of righteousness and the title of Crown Prince, the second prince was still able to share the limelight with the Crown Prince. From this point, the gap between the two could be seen. Would there really be a future for him to rely on such a person? Right now, the choice is in your hands. To join the Crown Prince or to join the second prince. Sect leader Zhang, you can decide for yourself. Zhang Tiantu narrowed his eyes and said, "Actually, I have a third choice." "What choice?" "To kill you." Zhang Tiantu clenched the iron sword in his hand and a strand of killing intent blossomed out from his body. As for Chu Xiu, there was a smile on his face. He said indifferently, "There are many who want to kill me in Jianghu. Unfortunately, most of them failed and died instead." Sect leader Zheng, do you want to give it a try? Chapter 455. In the end, Zhang Tiantu did not choose to make a move against Chu Xiu. First, things had already reached this point. Even if he killed Chu Xiu, it would be meaningless. The second prince would definitely have someone else to deal with this matter. Also, Zhang Tiantu did not have much confidence in fighting against Chu Xiu. Although Zhang Tiantu's realm far surpassed Chu Xiu's, if they were to really fight, Zhang Tiantu couldn't say for sure how much combat power Chu Xiu, who was famous in Jianghu, could display. He was a cautious person and would rather believe in the saying that those with great reputations were not just for show. Putting down the iron sword in his hand, Zhang Tiantu said dejectedly, "Now that things have already reached this point, do I have any other choice? But I want to know, what does the second prince want to do?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "The second prince's thinking is very simple. It's not that he wants to do something, it's that he doesn't want the crown prince to do something. Have the 5 schools, 8 families, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds in the southwest all decided to join the crown prince?" Zhang Tiantu shook his head and said, "Not really. Most of them are just watching. But like my Iron Sword sect, a well-known power in the southwest, they have already been contacted by the crown prince's people. Almost all of them have already decided to join the crown prince. In a month, the crown prince's people will personally come to the southwest Goddess Peak sky-gazing cave and gather the leaders of the 5 schools, 8 families, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds to participate in the alliance meeting. At that time, who will join the crown prince's side and who will remain neutral? Only at that time will it be clear." At this point, Zhang Tiantu could not help but look at Chu Xiao and said, "The crown prince has been planning this for several months. You are only starting to stop him now, but it is already too late." Among the top sects in the southwest, many of them have already made up their minds to stand on the crown prince's side. Even if you plot against me now, it is useless. Even if my Iron Sword sect openly opposes it, the influence of my Iron Sword sect is limited among the dozens of powers in the southwest. The entire southwest will still belong to the crown prince. In fact, if Chu Xiao had not set up a trap for him, Zhang Tiantu would not have joined the second prince. After all, the crown prince's people had already come many times and the conditions had already been discussed. They were just waiting for the alliance conference to officially submit to the crown prince's side. Now that he had been tricked by Chu Xiao, it was impossible for him to side with the crown prince, so he had no choice but to side with the second prince. Chu Xiao raised his eyebrows and said, "Too late? Not too late, just in time. Your Iron Sword sect is a great sect in the southwest region. It is only natural for you to know the details of the other forces. Tell me everything you know. You don't need to worry about the rest. All you need to know is which side you will stand on during the alliance meeting. That's enough." Zhang Tiantu couldn't help but ask, "What do you want?" When Chu Xiao told him his plan, Zhang Tiantu suddenly looked horrified. He couldn't help but say, "Madman! If you do this, do you know how many people will die in the southwest? Your methods are so cruel. When the time comes, will those sects be willing to serve the second prince?" Chu Xiao indifferently said, "You said it yourself. The alliance meeting will begin in a month. Since that's the case, I can only choose to use this method. To achieve great things, one shouldn't bother with trifles. In any case, if the second prince can't get it, the crown prince can't either." After receiving Zhang Tiantu's information, Chu Xiao immediately left. He wasn't really one of the second prince's people. What did it have to do with him whether or not the sects in the southwest were truly loyal to the second prince? Chu Xiao's goal was only to attack the crown prince and kill Li Yuan in passing. As for the other matters, they were just incidental. Because eunuch Li and Feng Zhenqi had brought their subordinates with them, they had to avoid the crown prince's eyes. Thus, their speed was rather slow. They only arrived 3 days later. At this time, Chu Xiao was very leisurely. Although the southwest was mostly filled with wild forests, it produced many good things. At this time, Chu Xiao was in a restaurant in the Congyang Manor, drinking the southwest specialty, the 100-fruit wine, and tasting the strange delicacies here. Of course, in the eyes of outsiders, the delicacies here were somewhat ferocious. For example, there were some ferocious beasts that were rarely seen in the outside world, as well as some strange insects and snakes. These were all the specialty products of the southwest. Seeing eunuch Li and Feng Zhenqi arrive, Chu Xiao called out to them and said, "Eunuch Li, Lord Feng, quickly come and try these delicacies of the southwest. Although they don't look good, they're still very good to eat." Eunuch Li was in no mood to taste the delicacies. After seeing Chu Xiao, he didn't even sit down and immediately asked, "Official Chu, how is it? Did the Iron Sword sect agree to stand on the second prince's side?" Chu Xiao poured a cup of wine for the two of them and said, "I have good news and bad news here. Which one would you like to hear, Eunuch Li?" Eunuch Li frowned and said, "All right." Chu Xiao said, "The good news is that the Iron Sword sect has been settled. They will firmly stand on the second prince's side. Otherwise, the only ending for them is death." "Then what's the bad news?" Chu Xiao spread his hands and said, "The bad news is that the crown prince has been planning in the southwest for a longer time than we imagined. He has even made contact with some of the top-ranking factions of the pugilistic world in the southwest. In less than a month, the crown prince will send people to the southwest to participate in the alliance meeting. At that time, the 5 clans, 8 clans, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds will all come to confirm that the entire southwest is under the crown prince's command. Since the crown prince is so confident, then all the factions similar to the Iron Sword sect should be preparing to join the crown prince's side. People tend to follow blindly. When the time comes, this group of people will speak up together, and the other factions will definitely follow suit." Hearing this, Eunuch Li immediately said anxiously, "Then you're still in the mood to drink and eat here? Why don't you hurry up and think of a countermeasure?" Chu Xiao said indifferently, "Eunuch Li, don't be anxious. We already have a countermeasure, but it's a little intense. I'm afraid that it will affect His Highness the Second Prince's reputation. Eunuch Li frowned and said, "What plan?" Chu Xiu said gravely, "The plan is actually very simple. Pull in one group and kill another. When the time comes, the factions in the southwest will fight amongst themselves. Then with the power we brought, we can guarantee that the Crown Prince's plan will be completely ruined. However, there is less than a month left. If we want to get a sect like Iron Sword Sect to stand on our side, one is possible. However, getting two is quite taxing. There is not enough time for us to lay out our plans. Thus, my methods will have to be more intense. Those forces that I forcibly pull over may not be loyal to the Second Prince. So, whether we do this or not is up to Eunuch Li and Lord Feng to decide." Feng Zhenqi didn't say anything. In reality, under the Second Prince's command, he only cared about killing people and didn't touch anything else. Eunuch Li was the Second Prince's personal eunuch, so he naturally had to make the decision. Eunuch Li thought for a moment, then clenched his teeth and said, "Since Official Chu is confident, then we'll go according to Official Chu's plan. Feng Zhenqi and I will support you from the side." A smile appeared on Chu Xiu's face. This was exactly what he wanted to hear from Eunuch Li. This way, if something happened in the future, he wouldn't be able to blame it on Chu Xiu. 5 factions, 8 clans, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds. Chu Xiu couldn't deal with them one by one, so he only needed to find one clan for each of them. This time, Chu Xiu chose Maple Valley's Lu clan. Maple Valley was quite famous in the southwest. It was filled with maple trees, and every autumn, Maple Valley would be covered in maple red. However, it was midsummer now, so Chu Xiu and the others wouldn't be able to see such beautiful scenery. Chu Xiu led Eunuch Li and Feng Zhenqi directly into Maple Valley. He asked to see the Lu clan's patriarch by name, but he didn't even say who he was. Originally, the Lu clan's disciples guarding the door didn't want to let Chu Xiu and the others in. However, as Eunuch Li and Feng Zhenqi released their Unity of Heaven and Man realm aura, the Lu clan's patriarch personally came out to welcome them and politely invited the 3 of them into the meeting hall. There were no martial Dao grandmasters in the southwest, and Unity of Heaven and Man realm martial artists were considered experts. Even the Lu clan had to treat 2 Unity of Heaven and Man realm martial artists with caution. In the Lu clan's meeting hall, the Lu clan's patriarch, Lu Ji, was an old man in his 80s. He hadn't stepped down from the position of patriarch at such an old age because the next generation of the Lu clan was somewhat disappointing. He could only continue to hold the position of patriarch for the time being, and see if he could find a suitable successor while he was still alive and had the strength. Lu Ji said with a smile, "May I ask your esteemed names, and why have you come to my Maple Valley's Lu clan?" Chu Xiu pointed at Eunuch Li and Feng Zhenqi and said with a smile, "This is the Second Prince's personal eunuch chief, Eunuch Li. This is the Dragon Riders' Imperial Army's Breaking Vanguard Battalion's general, Lord Feng Zhenqi." When Lu Ji saw that Chu Xiu, who had the lowest realm among the 3, spoke first, he felt a little strange. However, when Chu Xiu revealed Feng Zhenqi's and Eunuch Li's identities, Lu Ji secretly cursed. He knew about the matter between the Crown Prince and the Second Prince. Now that the Second Prince's people had come to find him, Lu Ji didn't need to think to know that this was not a good thing. Therefore Lu Ji immediately forced a smile and said, "The 3 of you." However, before Lu Ji could finish, he was interrupted by Chu Xiu. "Patriarch Lu, you don't need to say more. I know what you want to say." As he spoke, Chu Xiu began to take out the things from the secret box. Of course, they were not his own things, but the things he had asked from Eunuch Li. This is the 6th Revolution Cultivation Technique, Heart-Nourishing Formula of Tao. It is a Taoist secret manual that can cleanse one's marrow and nourish one's foundation. I heard that Patriarch Lu's descendants are a little weak, so this cultivation technique is just right. There are also 10 bottles of 6th Revolution medicinal pills, 500 taels of purple gold, and 10 5th Revolution precious weapons produced by the Divine Weapon Pavilion. After taking out these things, Chu Xiu stared at Lu Ji and said lightly, "Patriarch Lu, this is a gift from the Second Prince. If you accept it, your Lu clan will be the Second Prince's friend. If you refuse, I will slaughter your Lu clan according to the value of these gifts." Patriarch Lu, do you think that all the lives of your Lu clan added up are worth these gifts? Will there be any survivors? Chapter 456. Everyone had seen threatening people before. Whether it was the head of the Lu family, Lu Ji, Eunuch Li, or Feng Zhenqi, they were all experienced people, so they were no strangers to such matters. However, they had never seen someone threaten someone as fresh and refined as Chu Xiao. Furthermore, Chu Xiao's threat was no longer a threat. It was more like an ultimatum. Lu Ji's old face turned red. Of course, this was not because he was excited, but because he was angry. How was Chu Xiao's actions any different from a bandit's? Was this considered gifting? It was more like throwing his life away. However, Lu Ji really didn't know what to say, as this was a single-choice question. Lu Ji would normally be overjoyed as he looked at the gifts on the table. However, at this moment, these things only made him feel like his hands were scalding hot, as if they were going to take his life. He had already promised the crown prince. Was he going to betray him now? Of course, if he didn't betray him, then these gifts to bribe him would become money that could take his life. Lu Ji had been in the southwest for decades and had experienced countless killings. He could see a hint of killing intent in Chu Xiao's eyes. It was an indifferent killing intent. People with such eyes wouldn't take human life seriously. They were even more terrifying than those ferocious-looking people who threatened to kill at every turn. Thus, Lu Ji believed that if he refused, the other party would really slaughter the Lu family with his men. Meeting Chu Xiao's indifferent gaze, Lu Ji smiled bitterly as he put away the gifts one by one. If the crown prince's men were in the southwest, he would still have the intention of asking for reinforcements. However, the crown prince's men would only arrive a month later. By then, the crown prince's men would probably only be able to collect his corpse. A smile appeared on Chu Xiao's face. A wise man submits to circumstances. Lu family head, you are a wise man. On the day of the meeting, you should know which side you are on. After saying that, Chu Xiao left with Eunuch Li and Feng Zhenqi, leaving behind Lu Ji, who wore a complicated expression. After leaving the Lu family's residence, Eunuch Li asked doubtfully, Official Chu, will the Lu family really stand on our side after accepting the items? What if they go back on their words? Chu Xiao laughed coldly and said, Go back on my word? He wouldn't dare. If he accepted our things, he would be betraying the crown prince. Even if he immediately explained to the crown prince, the impression of him as a traitor would remain in the crown prince's heart. Even if the crown prince said that he trusted him, does Lu Ji dare to completely trust the crown prince? Chu Xiao's words were like a tongue twister, but Eunuch Li and Feng Zhenqi were not stupid, so they immediately understood. That was indeed the case. If Lu Ji were to betray them after accepting their items, he would not be able to please either side. He would offend both the crown prince and the second prince. At that time, as long as one of them was enraged, no one would be able to help him. Thinking of this, Eunuch Li also subconsciously glanced at Chu Xiao. It had to be said that this Chu Xiao was really ruthless. He didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. As long as he found the right target, he would be able to deal with a big power in a day. Less than a month's time was more than enough for them. Although the process was indeed unpleasant to hear, and Lu Ji must be cursing the three of them in his heart, that wasn't important. The result was the most important. Chu Xiao looked to the east and said in a deep voice, The next one is the Grey Sword sect of Mount Diansong. But before that, I'll have to trouble the two of you to act as the kidnappers. Eunuch Li frowned and said, Kidnap who? The three sons of the sect master of the Grey Sword sect, wind-chasing divine sword, Han Qianting. According to the information I obtained from the Iron Sword sect, his three sons are unwilling to cultivate in Mount Diansong. Every month, they would go out for a day to play. Make use of this one day to kidnap these three people without alerting anyone. Only the two of you will be able to do it. Eunuch Li and Feng Zhenqi were somewhat resistant to Chu Xiao's task. After all, they were also people with status, but now they had to act as kidnappers. It was really degrading. However, the most important thing at the moment was to destroy the crown prince's plan. They couldn't care less and could only do as he said. 5 days later, in the Grey Sword sect of Mount Diansong, the sect master of the Grey Sword sect, Han Qianting, stood on the cliff at the back of Mount Diansong with a frown. Although his three sons were disappointing, they knew their priorities. Usually, they would go down the mountain to play and come back in a day. But now, it had been 2 days and not even a shadow was seen. Mount Diansong is a famous mountain in the southwest. But I think with sect master Han's mood, You probably don't have time to appreciate the scenery of Mount Jiansong. What a pity. The moment he heard this voice, Han Qianting was shocked. He looked at the young cultivator who suddenly appeared behind him and shouted, "How did you get in here?" Mount Jiansong was easy to defend but difficult to attack. Other than a small path up the mountain, it was surrounded by cliffs. This was the forbidden area of the Grey Sword sect's back mountain. Only the Grey Sword sect's disciples were qualified to enter. How did this stranger get past the interrogation of so many Grey Sword sect's disciples and enter this place? Chu Xiu walked forward step by step. For a sect of the Grey Sword sect's level, it was fine if they didn't have a martial Dao grandmaster guarding it. They didn't even have a formation. With Chu Xiu's current mental strength cultivation, it was not difficult to enter such a place. Making a shushing gesture at Han Qianting, Chu Xiu indifferently said, "Sect leader Han, lower your voice. Don't draw others here. Could it be that you don't want the lives of your 3 sons anymore?" As he said this, Chu Xiu took out 3 jade pendants. These jade pendants were blood red in color and looked very magnificent. These 3 pieces of blood jade were gifts from Han Qianting to his 3 sons. They could nourish their blood and qi. The shape was personally carved by him, so Han Qianting could almost recognize them at a glance. These were his sons' things. Han Qianting's expression suddenly changed and he shouted in a low voice, "What did you do to my 3 sons?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Nothing, I just invited them to be guests. But I can't guarantee what will happen to them in the future. It all depends on Sect Master Han's attitude." Han Qianting said angrily, "The rule of the pugilistic world is that one shouldn't implicate family members." "Who are you? Shouldn't implicate family members?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Sect Master Han, you're wrong. Pulling one hair will affect the whole body. When you make a decision, you and your family will be implicated. So, as a person, it's best to be more cautious. As for who I am, that's not important. All you need to know is that I'm the second prince's man. That's enough." Han Qianting instantly understood everything, coldly saying, "The second prince is a dignified prince, I didn't expect him to be so despicable." Chu Xiu shrugged, not minding it. In any case, Han Qianting was scolding the second prince, not him. Looking at Han Qianting, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Sect Master Han, calm down. Some things aren't bad. As far as I know, Sect Master Han's 3 young masters aren't very talented. In your lifetime, will the next generation of the Blue Point Sword sect be inherited by your 3 young masters?" This was an unknown factor. A sect is not an aristocratic family, and the Blue Point Sword sect doesn't belong to you alone. For the benefit of the entire Blue Point Sword sect, is it worth it to abandon your own son? Han Qianting gritted his teeth. "What does the second prince want?" Chu Xiu waved his hand. "It's simple. In a month's time, the Blue Point Sword sect will stand on the second prince's side. There's no need for Sect Master Han to worry. Your 3 sons are safe and there are experts guiding them on the martial Dao. After the matter is settled, the 3 young masters will definitely return safely to Grey Point Mountain. Moreover, if Sect Master Han needs it, the second prince will also support Sect Master Han in the future, allowing one of your 3 young masters to smoothly inherit Grey Point Sword sect." Han Qianting's expression flickered, but Chu Xiu didn't say anything. He only lightly said, "There's no need for Sect Master Han to be in such a hurry to make any promises. When the time comes for the Blue Point Sword sect's meeting, we'll see how you perform. In any case, as long as Sect Master Han remembers one thing, the lives of your 3 sons are in your hands." With that said, Chu Xiu directly turned and descended the mountain, not bothering to look at Han Qianting's expression. Chu Xiu was 90% sure that Han Qianting would choose to agree. The difference between a sect and an aristocratic family was that an aristocratic family was made up of bloodlines. One's loss was shared, and one's glory was shared. On the other hand, a sect was biased towards the individual. Han Qianting was only the sect master of the Blue Point Sword sect, but the Blue Point Sword sect didn't represent Han Qianting. Which was more important, his own son or the future of the sect? In the intelligence Zhang Tiantu gave to Chu Xiu, this sect master Han wasn't the kind of heroic person who would sacrifice himself for the sect. On the contrary, he had always wanted his son to inherit the position of sect master. After descending Blue Point Mountain, Eunuch Li and Feng Zhenqi were waiting for him. Is the matter settled? Eunuch Li asked. Chu Xiu nodded. Rest assured, Eunuch Li. I won't make a move unless I have absolute confidence. Now there's only one left. Just pick one from the 23 strongholds. Eunuch Li's expression was somewhat gloomy. How are you going to make a move this time? Don't tell me you want us to go kidnap again? Chu Xiu shook his head. No need. This time it's very simple. Just throw money at them. Most of the bandits in the 23 strongholds are a motley crew. What they want is very simple, and that's profit. Moreover, the Crown Prince himself doesn't pay much attention to these bandits. He doesn't put as much effort on them as the people from the Iron Sword sect. So as long as we throw money at them, we can directly throw a stronghold that will submit to the second prince. Eunuch Li frowned. But is throwing money at them reliable? Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes. Of course they are reliable. Bandits are just greedy, not idiots. Since we can bribe them with so much money, it means that we can also take out the same amount of money to slaughter them. Chapter 457. The martial arts forces in the southwest were generally not strong, and the bandits were a motley crew. In fact, the existence of the bandits in the southwest was longer than that of the local martial arts forces. After all, this place was originally desolate, and it was only when the trade route was opened that it became somewhat populated. And where there was a trade route there was no lack of people, and that was bandits. However, these bandits did not have any plans, and most of them had an attitude of muddling through, and they even killed each other. So after so many years, there was no bandit force that could be used, and most of them were still just a motley crew. However, when one thought about it, it made sense. Bandits were inherently weak. The rise of the 36 great bandits of the northern lands was already a rare occurrence for thousands of years. As for the bandits of other places, they could only be considered small skirmishes. Chu Xiu and Eunuch Li chose Qing Feng Stronghold, one of the stronger of the 23 strongholds. The leader of the Qing Feng Stronghold, the smiling scholar Song Qian, was also interesting. Not only did he look like a scholar, but he was also a scholar. It was said that in his early years, Song Qian was just a scholar. He was so poor that he had no money to study, so he could only run to work as an accountant for a caravan. In the end, he was robbed by bandits on the way, and he was taken by the bandits to work as an accountant for the stronghold. Later, because he gave the stronghold a good idea, it caused the stronghold's power to soar. Song Qian also changed from an accountant to a military advisor, and he also got the opportunity to practice martial arts. Moreover, Song Qian did not expect that a weak scholar like him would have such a good talent in martial arts, and it only took him more than 20 years to reach the realm of the unity of heaven and man. So he found an opportunity to directly kill the previous stronghold master, and renamed the stronghold to Qing Feng Stronghold until today. This time, when Chu Xiu and the others arrived at Qing Feng Stronghold and felt the strength of the three, Song Qian directly came out to greet them. Although he had become a stronghold master, Song Qian still wore a scholar's robe, and with his elegant appearance at this time, he did not look like a bandit leader, but more like a teacher. May I know why the three of you came to my Qing Feng stronghold? Did my subordinate steal your goods by mistake? Don't worry, I'll get someone to send it back right away. I'll also send a gift as an apology. Song Qian cupped his hands politely and his attitude was very humble. Some of the caravans traveling to the southwest could move, while others could not. For example, the merchant caravans from the major factions had strong defenses. Not to mention whether they could even touch them. Even if they did, the other party would take revenge on them in the future. Therefore, the bandits of the 23 strongholds changed very quickly. Who knew if there would be a day when someone else would directly break into the stronghold and exterminate the entire clan? Because of this, after Song Qian became the fort master, he set down a rule that he would only rob and not kill. He could not go to the extreme. Moreover, he couldn't use it immediately after he stole it. Instead, he had to store it for a few months. When he saw that no one came for revenge, he could then spend it. If someone came, then he would lower his stance, return the item, and apologize. Anyway, to bandits like them, face was not something they could eat, so what was the use of having him? Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Head Song guessed wrong. We are not here to ask for something, but to deliver something." As he said this, Chu Xiu began to take out the purple gold from the outside, piece by piece. Needless to say, this scene was quite shocking. At least to a bandit leader like Song Lian, he had never seen so much purple gold in his entire life. He had quite a lot of ordinary gold and silver items, but purple gold could be used to set up matrices and forge weapons. It was definitely a hard currency. Ordinary small aristocratic families would at most have a few dozen taels of purple gold. For someone like Chu Xiu to take it out and place it on the table piece by piece, it was quite shocking. Moreover, to be honest, even Chu Xiu himself was moved by this purple gold. Even the annual tax revenue of the Guanxi region was not this much. A prince was a prince, after all, especially a prince like the second prince who held real power and had the chance to ascend to the throne in the future. Their foundations were not ordinary. After taking out 10 purple gold bricks in a row, Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Head Song, these are gifts from the second prince. I wonder if these things are enough for Head Song to stand on the second prince's side? Of course, if Head Song says it's not enough, I still have more here." Song Lian swallowed his saliva, his eyes almost imprinted on the purple gold bricks. Song Lian was indeed shocked when he heard about the second prince, but he quickly regained his composure. Whether it was the crown prince or the second prince, the most important thing was to be able to obtain benefits. Moreover, it was indeed as Chu Xiu had guessed. The crown prince did not spend too much effort on the bandits of the 23 strongholds. Compared to some other powers, the 23 strongholds had the most bandits, but they were still a motley crew. The crown prince, LV Longji, had an innate dislike for these bandits. Furthermore, as long as the sects in the southwest agreed to pledge their allegiance to the crown prince, it was no longer important whether these bandits pledged allegiance or not. In any case, they would not be able to cause much trouble. Thus, Eunuch Chen and Li Yuan, the crown prince's trusted aides, did not even personally come to the 23 strongholds. They only sent a few ordinary subordinates to discuss the conditions with the bandits and give them some things before leaving. Even if Song Lian and the other bandits of the 23 strongholds were dissatisfied, it was useless. Once the other powers of the martial arts world agreed, if the bandits of the 23 strongholds wanted to cause trouble, the local martial arts world powers would probably be enough to take care of them all before the crown prince even made a move. Thus, after Chu Xiu took out so many purple gold bricks, Song Lian did not even need to think about it and immediately leaned towards the second prince's side. As for Chu Xiu asking him if it was enough, although Song Lian thought that he would never complain about having too many purple gold bricks, he still forced his gaze away from the purple gold bricks and said with a dry laugh, "It's enough. Of course it's enough." He was not an idiot and knew what the consequences of being insatiably greedy were. 10 purple gold bricks were enough to buy the entire Qingfeng stronghold. If he were to be even more greedy and take the opportunity to extort money from the second prince, the consequences would probably not be good. Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said, "It's good that it's enough. Head Song, you should know what to do at the alliance meeting in a month's time." Song Lian hurriedly nodded and said, I know. Please rest assured. The second prince is so generous. Although I am a bandit, I also know the word, trustworthy. I will definitely not let your highness down." Chu Xiu nodded and turned to leave. Eunuch Li and Fang Zhenqi, who were behind him, looked at each other. They also did not dare to believe that the matter had been settled so easily. Wasn't this a little too fast? Fang Zhenqi was on a mission to kill people, so he was only slightly surprised by the amount of time Chu Xiu had used. However, Eunuch Li was different. He had been by LV Longguang's side for a long time. Although he was not the most capable subordinate of LV Longguang, he was the person LV Longguang trusted the most. He had participated in many secret missions and carried out many of them. He could also use the methods that Chu Xiu had used. Other than the time when he had tricked Zhang Chengyong, the other methods did not require much skill. However, what was truly terrifying about Chu Xiu's methods was that he had a grasp of the human heart. When faced with different people, he could use the most suitable methods to make them submit. This was the most terrifying thing. No one was invulnerable. As long as these people had the slightest flaw, they would be caught by Chu Xiu. Then, he would use the most suitable method to defeat them one by one. After dealing with these people, Chu Xiu, Eunuch Li, and the others went into hiding in the southwest. A month later, Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen also brought people to the southwest. This time, many of the crown prince's subordinates had come. Other than Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen, there were also 3 experts at the unity of heaven and man realm. They were all guests that the crown prince had recruited. Once again coming to the southwest, Li Yuan felt rather high-spirited. The main people in charge of recruiting and subduing these people in the southwest were Li Yuan and eunuch Chen. If this matter was done well, his status in the eyes of the crown prince would definitely rise by a large margin. After arriving in the southwest, Li Yuan did not delay. He directly sent invitations to the people of the 5 clans, 8 clans, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds, asking them to come to the Goddess Peak's heaven-gazing cave to participate in the alliance meeting. The Goddess Peak was very famous in the southwest. Legend had it that in ancient times, a goddess had ascended here, which was why it was named the Goddess Peak. As for the heaven-gazing cave, it was a cave in the Goddess Peak. Because there was a huge opening at the top, one could see the sky if they raised their heads, which was why it was called the heaven-gazing cave. At this moment, the huge cave had already been tidied up neatly. The leaders of the 5 clans, 8 clans, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds were all gathered here. They were seated according to their respective power rankings. Li Yuan, eunuch Chen, and the others stood in the center. After everyone had arrived, Li Yuan cupped his hands towards the people present and said, "Everyone, although the southwest is desolate and barren, it is still the territory of the Dachi kingdom. Everyone started from scratch. It was not easy for you to establish such a foundation in the southwest. I am very impressed. Now that His Highness the Crown Prince has the mandate of heaven, he will ascend to the throne in the future. Therefore, we have prepared to invite all the outstanding talents of the Jianghu in the southwest to jointly raise the prestige of the Dachi kingdom." Li Yuan spoke passionately, and there was some applause from below. However, Li Yuan still felt that something was wrong. Why were the reactions of some of the people below not so intense? Since they had already come to participate in the alliance meeting, could it be that they still had some doubts about this matter? However, at this moment, a sneering voice came from outside. They started from scratch and accumulated such a large family property. But the crown prince took it all away with a single sentence. He even glorified it by raising the prestige of the Dachi kingdom. Could it be that the crown prince is preparing to lead these warriors of the southwest to attack the northern Yan? Chapter 458. When Chu Xiu appeared in front of Li Yuan, Li Yuan's expression suddenly changed. What shocked him was not that Chu Xiu had appeared here, but that Chu Xiu was followed by Feng Zhenqi and eunuch Chen. What this meant was self-evident. Chu Xiu had actually submitted to the second prince. Li Yuan said coldly, "Chu Xiu, if I had known that you had submitted to the second prince, eunuch Chen and I would have taken your life at the Luo family, even if we had to chase you for thousands of miles." Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "You've misunderstood the cause and effect of this matter. If you hadn't caused trouble for me at the Luo family, I wouldn't have chosen to help the second prince. Everyone in the pugilistic world knows what kind of character I, Chu Xiu, am. I've never been magnanimous. It's not my style to swallow a slap in the face." Looking at the dragon riders and eunuch Li's subordinates that Chu Xiu had brought, Li Yuan couldn't help but sneer. "You want to cause trouble for me with just these few people? You're dreaming. Chu Xiu, you've chosen the wrong place." Li Yuan didn't know about Chu Xiu's arrangements in the southwest. He thought that Chu Xiu had only followed his tracks. If it had been somewhere else, Chu Xiu's people would have caused him some trouble if they had suddenly launched a sneak attack. But now, the warriors in the southwest were all the crown prince's men. Li Yuan immediately said in a deep voice, "Everyone, since you've already chosen to submit to the crown prince, you should show some sincerity. Kill these people and do it immediately." Li Yuan was rather decisive in his actions. Under such circumstances, he could only kill Chu Xiu and all the subordinates of the second prince. This would be the most beneficial to the crown prince. If they were in Great Liang City, even if Li Yuan had such an opportunity, he would not dare to do it, because that was Great Liang City. The imperial family of Eastern Qi did not forbid infighting, but in the capital city of the imperial family, the infighting had to be controlled to a certain extent. It was simply impossible for hundreds and thousands of people to fight at the same time in Great Liang City. Following Li Yuan's angry shout, there were indeed quite a number of martial artists who belonged to the 5 sects, 8 families, and 11 sects who rushed out. Iron Sword sect was not the only sect that Li Yuan was trying to win over. At that moment, those sects had already decided to side with the crown prince. Thus, they were trying to seize the credit and improve their impression in the crown prince's eyes. Moreover, this group of people was not worried at all that they would lose. The strength of their side had completely crushed Chu Xiu's side. The Crown Prince's side already had 4 great experts at the One with Heaven realm. In addition to the people from the southwest, there were over 10 people at the One with Heaven realm. In contrast, what about Chu Xiu's side? There were only Eunuch Chen and Feng Zhenqi. It would be too easy to get rid of them. However, they did not realize that the people from the Iron Sword sect, who used to fight with them for everything, did not even move. Instead, there was a hint of surprise in their eyes. At this moment, Li Yuan also said to the 3 guests behind him in a deep voice, "You guys attack too?" One of the 3 said doubtfully, "With just those few people on the other side, do we even need to make a move? They are just 2 martial artists at the One with Heaven realm, and one is only at the 5 cheese collecting in the Origin realm. Don't these fellows from the southwest want to snatch the credit? Just let them have it." Li Yuan coldly snorted and said, "Stop talking nonsense and quickly attack. What do you guys know? That is Chu Xiu, who is ranked 6th on the Longhu list. Weaker martial artists at the One with Heaven realm have no way of fighting back in front of him. Just this group of rotten fish and shrimps will not be able to kill an expert ranked 6th on the Longhu list." Although Li Yuan wanted to recruit these martial artists from the southwest on behalf of the Crown Prince, Li Yuan actually looked down on them. These martial artists from the southwest were not very strong. After all, most of them were born in the wilderness and had limited cultivation techniques. It could be said that they were born with a disadvantage. No matter how strong they were, they could not be that strong. Li Yuan had exchanged blows with Chu Xiu before. Although he kept saying that he wanted to teach Chu Xiu a lesson on behalf of the Crown Prince, he was not foolish enough to want to make a move himself. Li Yuan had estimated that if he were to personally fight with Chu Xiu, he would not even be able to withstand 3 moves from Chu Xiu. This was a heaven-sent opportunity. The strength on his side could be said to be overwhelming. There was a chance to get rid of Chu Xiu completely. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "Eunuch Chen, Lord Feng, make your move." As soon as he said this, Chu Xiu was the first to rush out. Seeing this, some of the martial artists from the southwest could not help but sneer. To be honest, the majority of them really did not know Chu Xiu's identity. Even though Li Yuan had called out Chu Xiu's name, they still could not recall who Chu Xiu was. In the wilderness of the southwest, far from the Central Plains, the disputes of the Central Plains had nothing to do with them. Not to mention a young talent on the Longhu list like Chu Xiu, they probably did not even care about the battle between the righteous and demonic paths on floating Jade Mountain. In their opinion, the second prince really had no subordinates. Even a martial artist at the 5 cheese Origin realm was so arrogant and dared to make the first move. He was simply courting death. However, as soon as the 2 sides came into contact, the faces of the southwestern cultivators instantly became filled with terror. The first to rush out was the head of the Su family, one of the 8 families. This Su family head was eager to make a contribution. He had actually used a secret movement technique and was the first to attack Chu Xiu. He held a crescent blade that was like a full moon in his hand. Black demonic chi radiated from it, making it look very ferocious. "Die!" The Su family head slashed down with his blade. Demonic chi lingered on the blade and a dazzling demonic chi blade aura erupted. However, the moment he slashed down with his blade, he suddenly realized that the young man opposite him seemed to have a mocking smile on his face. A martial artist at the 5 cheese Origin realm actually dared to mock him? Could it be that this person was an idiot? But then he realized that the one who was truly stupid was himself. The moment the Su family head slashed out with his blade, Chu Xiu also made his move. Facing the ferocious demonic blade, Chu Xiu formed the lion seal with his hand. In an instant, a thunderous Buddhist roar exploded. Under the thunderous Buddhist roar, the Su family head's expression suddenly changed. The voice seemed to resound in his mind, causing his skull to swell. Even his blade began to tremble. 9 transformation lion roar. Is this guy a layman disciple of the Great Light Temple? Some people who did not know Chu Xiu exclaimed. After all, the Great Light Temple's 9 transformation lion roar was very famous in the martial world. Chu Xiu's lion seal was very similar to the 9 transformation lion roar. It was even 80% similar. It was normal for people to mistake it. Meanwhile, Zhang Tiantu, who knew Chu Xiu's identity, had a strange expression. Chu Xiu was a disciple of the Great Light Temple? The disciples of the Great Light Temple would probably want to kill him. At this moment, Chu Xiu's blade was also unsheathed. The pitch-black heavenly demon dance was unsheathed by Chu Xiu. In an instant, boundless demonic qi gathered on the long blade. The crimson demonic qi was like a sharp blade, staining the black blade with an evil crimson glow. As Chu Xiu's blade slashed down, evil spirits wailed and demons roared. This blade seemed to have been slashed out from hell, causing the expressions of everyone present to change. Compared to Chu Xiu's demonic blade, the Su clan leader's demonic blade paled in comparison. It was no wonder that Chu Xiu would show a mocking smile. Using a blade in front of him, using a demonic blade in front of him, was asking to be humiliated. The Su clan leader also felt the terror of Chu Xiu's demonic blade. He could not help but reveal a look of shock in his eyes. The blade in his hand reversed, wanting to temporarily defend and avoid the blade's edge. However, it was too late. Chu Xiu was not going to give him this chance. The moment he changed his attack, he felt as if he had fallen into a large net. All possible routes of escape were blocked. He had nowhere to run and could only face it head-on. Fight! The moment Chu Xiu's Avicii Dao slashed down 3 times, the Su clan leader's body immediately burst into a bloody mist. He had actually decisively chosen to burn his blood essence. 4 warriors from the southwest like the head of the Su family. Although the cultivation techniques they cultivated were not very strong, because of the cruel environment, almost every one of them had stood out from this kind of environment where they fought all day long. Their fighting styles were all decisive and fierce. Seeing that something was wrong, the Su clan leader immediately burned his blood essence. A dense blood qi surged into his blade, causing the bloody light on his blade to soar several feet. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu's blade had already landed. In an instant, there was a loud bang from the collision of stellar qi. The demonic qi and blood qi flew in all directions. Chu Xiu stood in place, but the Su clan leader had already been cut in 2 by Chu Xiu. 1 slash. With only 1 slash, the Su clan leader, who had some fame in the southwest, had been cut in 2 like a chicken being slaughtered. This scene immediately stunned the people who were about to rush up from behind. To put it bluntly, sometimes even killing a chicken was not as satisfying as this. However, in the eyes of Zhang Tiantu, who was equivalent to a martial artist in the unity of heaven and man realm, Chu Xiu had used more than 2 moves. The Su family's patriarch was the same. When the 2 sides exchanged blows, they had changed back and forth many times. This kind of secret confrontation was not something that could be seen by experts in the same realm. Of course, for most warriors, they could only see these things in front of them. Chu Xiu's blade had cut down the Su clan leader. It was that simple. Trash. Li Yuan cursed under his breath. He recalled the scene at the Luo family where Chu Xiu had shocked everyone. In the martial arts world, sometimes quantity did not necessarily equal quality. This was also the case in the army. In particular, there were many experts in the Eastern Qi military, and those generals loved to fight in front of the battlefield. Taking the head of the enemy's general in the midst of 1,000,000 soldiers was a serious blow to the morale of the enemy. Now, Chu Xiu already had this feeling. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.